Chapter 51-51. Lu Hui, who got the approval of her comrades, turned to Guo and said, Guo, I think you're overthinking it. There's nothing strange about Yi Qian. People with poor acceptance are all like that. You just have to get used to it. Now even Captain Lei has his eyes on Yi Qian. I'm just waiting for her to leave. Guo glanced at Lu Hui, then slowly looked away. She lowered her gaze slightly. The assistant said, Guo, you should focus on your own training in the future. Don't pay too much attention to Yi Qian. I tried it this afternoon. There's nothing special about her. You're overthinking it. Was she really overthinking it? Guo pressed her lips together. Actually, there was nothing strange about Yi Qian. Was she really overthinking it? Was it really? Why did she feel like something was wrong? Lu Hui was right. Even Captain Lei had his eyes on Yi Qian. He even arranged for Instructor Luo and the others to watch over Yi Qian's training. It was obvious that Captain Lei was not very satisfied with Yi Qian. The 8-lesson parachuting skills were about to start. Yi Qian was making mistakes in her training. Could she really continue with the following training? With Yi Qian's current progress, it was really a bit of a problem whether she could join the 8-lesson parachuting skills training. The deployment of the parachuting skills in the 8 courses represented the first step for the 15 female soldiers to enter the special reconnaissance training. It was also a symbolic step. From then on, they were no longer ordinary female soldiers who were parachuted in, but members of the special reconnaissance team of the Airborne Special Forces. Whether Yi Qian could stay or not depended on Instructor Luo and the others' approval. She had an extra 4 hours of training every day, and Instructor Luo and the others were personally supervising her. TSK. Difficult days were really coming. I hope she can get through it. If she does, she'll pass. Yeah, I'm just afraid she can't get through it. For more hours of training than us. Can her body take it? Hey, Lu Hui, do you really want her to leave? Lu Hui, who was lying on the bed, didn't answer immediately this time. Instead, she was so silent that the female soldier who asked her thought she was asleep and didn't hear it. Then she slowly said, If she can survive the training of Instructor Luo and the others, and Instructor Luo and the others agree to let her pass, then she can stay. Since the instructors think that she can stay, what else can I say? The female soldiers lowered their heads in response. This fellow had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Then let him stay. He has a good temper and won't cause any trouble. It's not up to us. She has to work hard. Go to sleep. We still have training tomorrow. Yi Qian is still training, but we're already sleeping. It's quite pitiful. She's pitiful, we're pitiful too. Okay, let's sleep. Lu Hui picked up the quilt and covered her head, hiding her whole body under the quilt. She didn't sleep and just stared blankly at him, thinking about something. After a long time, she sighed softly and seemed to say something in a low voice. Then, she turned over and closed her eyes to sleep. Meanwhile, outside, Yi Qian had already started his 8-course parachute training. She didn't come here just to be an ordinary paratrooper. She came here to be a special scout. If she wanted to catch up to the female paratroopers who had at least 2 years of foundation, she had to strengthen her training. Not to mention that she had to train 4 more hours a day than the female paratroopers. Even half the training time was necessary. Part of the training was the foundation, and part of it was strengthening. After half a year, she would surpass all the female paratroopers. She would definitely surpass them. Yi Qian, who was sweating profusely, endured the fatigue of his body and persevered with his strong will until the intensive training ended. Persevering like this, the female paratroopers never had the chance to see Yi Qian leave. Chapter 51-52. 4 days later, the night landing of the female soldiers was carried out as scheduled. Captain Lei ignored Yi Qian's request on the grounds that Yi Qian's foundation was not up to standard. Under the pitiful gazes of the female soldiers, Yi Qian was forced to stay by the black-faced Captain Lei. Yi Qian was not even qualified to board the plane. You didn't even pass the most basic foundation, and you still want to board the plane for a night landing? Do you think the army is yours? Do you think the plane is yours? Don't you know how much you're worth? Don't you know? In front of all the female soldiers, Captain Lei reprimanded Yi Qian. Yi Qian lowered his head to prevent himself from laughing, while the female soldiers who did not know blushed for Yi Qian. Seeing that Yi Qian still lowered his head every time he was reprimanded like before, with a "I'm honest, I'm easy to bully, you can scold me" look, the female soldiers hated him for not fighting back. He was already reprimanded like a grandson, why did he still not make much progress? No, there was progress, but the speed of progress was too slow, so slow that sometimes it really made people angry. Now that they saw Captain Lei like this, none of the female soldiers dared to speak up for Yi Qian. It was not that they were afraid of being implicated, but that he was so useless that they did not have the heart to plead for him. The squad leader looked at Yi Qian, who could not raise his head, and sighed deeply in his heart. There were very few soldiers like Yi Qian. Even after individual training, the results were the same. Today, he was reprimanded by Captain Lei in front of all the female and male soldiers. Captain Lei was afraid that he also had the thought of giving up. What would the original army think of him if he returned to the airborne force in the end? Once he returned to the original army, Yi Qian really had no choice but to retire. Captain Lei reprimanded him a few words, then waved his hand, indicating that Yi Qian should take the initiative to leave. The female soldiers saw Yi Qian holding the umbrella and leaving the field with a gloomy face. It was a windy and cloudless night. The female soldiers who had passed the 3 checkpoints sat quietly in the resting area to relax and wait for their flight to take off. During the waiting process, their eyes mostly fell on the male soldiers in the parachute area. Tonight, they and the male soldiers would complete the night landing together, and then they would continue to do night parachute training to train the female soldiers' ability to fight at night. One by one, the transport planes carrying the male soldiers took off. The rumbling sound did not bring any psychological pressure to the female soldiers. On the contrary, it brought them excitement. The long-awaited night landing was about to begin. At this moment, all the female soldiers were particularly excited. Even though they had undergone night landing training in their original units, they still could not hold back their excitement tonight. All of them were in high spirits and full of confidence. Yi Qian. Calm. In the distance, Xiao Tu was carefully inspecting Yi Jian's umbrella and patting the heavy umbrella bag hard. Xiao Tu smiled and said, "It's a new model tonight. Do you remember all the possible dangers in the air? Do you remember the specific solutions?" The female soldiers parachuted for the transport planes. Yi Qian, who had parachuted for 5 consecutive nights, began to parachute for the 5 types of aircraft that he needed to master. 5 types of aircraft, 9 types of terrains, opening double parachutes, fully armed parachutes, and other parachuting skills were all difficulties that Yi Qian needed to overcome in the next 4 months. The airborne soldiers had 6 levels of training, and Yi Qian had already reached the 4th level, which was parachute training. She had already completed the 800-meter parachute jump of the small transport plane. Tonight, it was the 1,000-meter jump of the large transport plane. After completing 5 consecutive jumps, she would receive a golden umbrella emblem, which was given to every paratrooper who completed it. Chapter 51-53. After the 4th stage, parachute jump training, they would enter the 5th stage, actual combat training, followed by the final stage, which was also the final stage to become an airborne combat vanguard. Yi Qian had to pass all of these stages, such as training at night, on water, in jungles, in the desert, on grasslands, on plateaus, on islands, on bridges, and so on. Yi Qian, who only had half a year, wished she could squeeze every second into a few seconds. She knew that completing the 5th stage, actual combat training, would take at least a full year, and she only had 2 months. However, this was not difficult for Yi Qian. As an Army Special Forces soldier, she had already completed all kinds of regional training. Therefore, Yi Qian only needed to complete the airborne combat training, which she had never done before. 2 months was enough for Yi Qian. The small transport plane carrying the female soldiers had already left the ground and was heading into the night sky. The female soldiers in the cabin hugged their umbrellas, and their high spirits had already calmed down. The moment they boarded the plane, this group of outstanding female airborne soldiers had already adjusted themselves to their best state. At this moment, all of them sat with calm expressions and remained silent. The signal lights lit up, and the female soldiers were the first to jump out of the plane. Their slender but fearless figures bravely leaped into the starry night sky. The stars were bright and the moon was clear. The female soldiers jumped out of the plane one by one, and the umbrellas opened with a bang. At this moment, they were the brightest stars in the night sky. The transport plane carrying the Special Forces scouts was flying in another direction. Tonight, Yi Qian needed to complete the training for the jump at an altitude of 1,000 meters. The landing area she would be jumping to was a gravelly area with a lack of trees. What surprised Yi Qian was that this night's landing area was actually the same place she had trained with Principal Chen before, but the landing location was different. Yi Qian's cheeks were cut painfully by the wind as she leaped from an altitude of 1,000 meters. The air pressure made her chest feel as if it weighed 1,000 pounds, and she had the illusion that she would vomit blood at any moment. Only when the umbrellas opened did the feeling of being squeezed gradually disappear. With both feet on the ground, Yi Qian unfastened his parachute and stood at the place where he had been many years ago. As he looked at the scenery he had seen before, his eyes gradually moistened. "Uncle Chen, I'm back, but you're no longer by my side." The wind gently blew past his ears, like the gentle hands of an elder caressing him. Yi Qian raised his hand to wipe the tears from the corners of his eyes and quickly headed towards the assembly point. She didn't have much time to grieve, and Uncle Chen didn't want to see her delay her training because of grief. Her hard work was the best sacrifice for Uncle Chen. Captain Lei, who was the first to jump, saw Yi Qian's figure appear in the night. His resolute face had a slight smile. The harsh training did not suppress the running figure. Instead, it made her braver and braver. The braver she was, the faster she improved. The 1,000-meter night descent was completed, and the training for the next stage could begin. The female soldiers who had completed the night descent returned with smiles on their faces. As they approached the door of the dormitory, the vice squad leader motioned for the female soldiers to be quiet so as not to wake Yi Qian up. The female soldiers who were familiar with their dormitory didn't need to turn on the lights to move normally. Perhaps it was because Captain Lei had fiercely reprimanded Yi Qian in front of them, but everyone deliberately walked lightly. Even Lu Hui, who always liked to talk, kept her mouth shut and didn't say a word. Chapter 51-54. Fang Xing walked to the side of the bed and glanced up. Then, the female soldiers heard her exclaim softly. Fang Xing tiptoed and touched the top bunk. A surprised voice floated from the darkness. "Yi Qian's bed is empty. She didn't return to the dorm." "What? She's not on the bed?" a female soldier said in surprise and walked towards Fang Xing. The vice squad leader immediately turned on the lights and the dark room was lit up. Everyone's eyes fell on Yi Qian's bed. The quilt was folded into a square shape. It was obvious that Yi Qian didn't return to the dorm at all. Why isn't she back yet? Did the instructor make her train again? The female soldier standing with Fang Xing frowned and said, "It's already 2 in the morning. She should be back." Lu Hui ran to the balcony and said, "There are no clothes on the balcony. She didn't return to the dorm tonight. Her toothbrush and towel are dry. She didn't come back to wash up either." Guo Chui, who was checking Yi Qian's personal belongings, said, "She didn't return to the dorm tonight. Vice squad leader, we have to go out and look for her." The vice squad leader opened Yi Qian's closet and closed it. You guys go wash up first. I'll go find the squad leader. I'll tell you guys when I come back. Knowing that Yi Qian didn't return, the squad leader was anxious. She scolded Captain Lei in front of so many soldiers. Could it be that she did something bad? Bah, don't talk nonsense. Hasn't she been scolded enough? She's used to it. How could she do something bad? Then where is she? It's already 2 in the morning, and she still hasn't returned to the dorm. Where did she go? I suspect she's hiding somewhere crying. Maybe she got tired from crying and accidentally fell asleep? You really know how to think. Let's see what the vice squad leader has to say first. Lu Hui listened to the conversation of her comrades. She nudged Guo with her elbow and whispered towards Yi Qian's empty bed. What do you think? I don't think something bad will happen. Although Yi Qian's personality is dull and he doesn't like to talk, he can withstand pressure pretty well. Otherwise, he would have been targeted by you long ago. Guo calmly analyzed the situation. Lu Hui rolled her eyes at her. How could she say that? But it did make sense. Then, as Tang Lin said, she cried herself to sleep? After saying that, Lu Hui couldn't believe it herself. How is that possible? Either something happened or he's still training. Let's go to the field and take a look. With that, Lu Hui turned to leave. Guo pulled her back. Why are you in such a hurry? Let's wait for the assistant manager to come back first. Lu Hui stopped and frowned. Do you think she's really going to take it too hard? If we don't go look for her soon, if something really happens, everyone will be finished. Speaking of which, Guo and the other 6 female soldiers felt their hearts beating wildly. When the class leader found out that Yi Qian didn't come back, her first thought was that Yi Qian found a place to cry because he was scolded. Let's go to the training ground first. Don't disturb the male soldiers. The class leader made a prompt decision. Good. Let's split up. The assistant manager nodded. After returning to the dormitory, she didn't dare to bring all the female soldiers with her. She only had Guo, Lu Hui, and Fang Xing accompany her to look for Yi Qian. At this time, Yi Qian was still on the way back. It would take about 3 minutes for him to arrive at the airport. She walked out of the airport with the male soldiers. In order to find her, the female soldiers had been searching for her in the dark for almost half an hour. There was no one in the field, the entertainment room, or the cafeteria. There was no one in the place where they thought she might be. When they found the class leader, they were a little flustered. After another 10 minutes, just as the class leader was about to tell Captain Lei, Yi Qian appeared in front of the brightly lit dormitory. Chapter 51-55. When the female soldiers who were waiting for their comrades to come back saw Yi Qian, they froze for a moment before standing up in unison. Tang Lin was the first to rush up. Where did you go? Why didn't you come back so late? You scared everyone to death. The other 3 female soldiers also rushed over. Yi Qian silently took a step back, glanced at them, and slowly lowered her head. She didn't want to say more. Headache, I came back later than them. The squad leader and assistant squad leader went out to look for you. You. Another female soldier surnamed Li frowned. She looked unhappy, but swallowed her words. It's fine. It's fine as long as you're back. Hurry up and wash up and go to sleep. Lin, let's go find the squad leader and the others first. Yi Qian retreated to the side and quietly waited for Tang Lin and Li Xiushui to come out. When the two passed by Yi Qian, they stopped in their tracks. Li Xiushui, who was slightly shorter than the other female soldiers, said in a deep voice, "In the future, if you don't come back to the dormitory, can you leave a note? Forget it. Don't say any more. Hurry up and find the squad leader." The 2 female soldiers who didn't come out persuaded Li Xiushui. Another female soldier reached out and pulled Yi Qian into the dormitory. "We'll ask her. You 2 hurry up and find the squad leader." The squad leader and assistant squad leader had already found Captain Lei. Before they spoke, Captain Lei guessed why they were looking for him. "I pulled her out as a punishment. She ran 20 kilometers and did 500 squats. She should be back in the dormitory by now. So she went to receive her punishment. No matter how the two female soldiers asked Yi Qian, she didn't say a word. She took the basin and went to the bathroom to wash up. Fortunately, she always refused to communicate with others. Although the female soldiers were already used to it, they didn't get angry at Yi Qian. Lu Wei, Guichui, and Fang Xing came back and found out that Yi Qian had returned. She was now washing up in the bathroom. As for where she went, they couldn't get an answer. The three of them were a little pale. She didn't return to the dormitory, which made her comrades worried. She didn't even give them an explanation. How infuriating! Yi Qian, who had just finished washing up, came back with a basin in her hand. She felt several cold gazes on her like nails. She stood at the door for a long time before saying in a voice as soft as a mosquito, "I'm sorry. It was her fault for making them worry." Lu Wei fiercely glared at her and coldly said, "I don't dare. Please be more careful in the future, okay? It's good that you're back. Go to sleep, you still have training tomorrow." When Guichui saw that Yi Qian didn't even dare to enter the dormitory, she pitied Yi Qian. She walked over and took away the basin in Yi Qian's hands. She sighed and said, "Don't be like this in the future. Your comrades are all very worried about you. Captain is scolding you for your own good. He wants you to stay, so don't worry about it. Come in and sleep." Yi Qian gently nodded and let Guichui pull her into the dormitory like a little daughter-in-law. Lu Wei heavily snorted and didn't say anything else. When the vice squad leader came back, she saw that there was no light in the half-closed dormitory door. She knew that Yi Qian had returned. She and the squad leader said goodnight to each other and gently pushed the door open. She was punished by Captain Lei until now to come back. Sigh, they didn't even have the mood to criticize her anymore. There's nothing special about Yi Qian. Don't keep an eye on her in the future. The next day, the squad leader repeatedly warned the female soldiers. In the following days, Yi Qian was no longer closely watched by the vice squad leader and the female soldiers. Her training continued smoothly until 6 months later. Yi Qian came out of the forest with the male soldiers in the middle of the night, ending half a year of disguise. Chapter 51-56. The jungle in September was so humid that even the air in their mouths carried moisture. When they came out of the forest, their whole body was wet as if they had walked in water. There was no clean spot on their body. With every step they took, the soaked military boots could step on water overflowing from the holes. In the words of the male soldiers, if they stayed here for a few more days, mushrooms would grow on their bodies. After completing the heavy airdrop, the parafoil infiltration, and the successful completion of the emergency rescue decapitation operation maneuver, the Airborne Special Forces scouts quickly found a place to sit and rest after coming out of the forest. The airborne soldier in charge of communications contacted the maneuver headquarters and reported the direction. There were still 8 hours for all the airborne special forces to travel and rest. At this time, Captain Lei led the soldiers to find a place with flat terrain and a wide view to rest. The morning wind wrapped in moisture blew slightly, and the stickiness of the whole body became stronger. A male soldier had just taken off his military boots when several comrades sitting next to him quickly moved at least 5 meters away from him at the speed of light. They shouted, "Wang Xian, you broke the rules. Put away your biochemical weapon." There was no place for them to take a bath during the 1-week jungle maneuver. Before resting at night, they found a place near a water source and washed up a little. Now that the boots were taken off, the smell wafted with the wind, and a ready-made biochemical weapon appeared. Usually, everyone laughed and took off their shoes as they should, enjoying blessings and suffering together. But this time, Captain Lei coughed heavily twice and reminded the male soldiers, "Comrades, pay attention. Keep your image steady, understand?" There was still a female soldier. If the group of rough men didn't remind them, they definitely wouldn't pay attention. After being reminded, Many of the male soldiers who were untying their laces quickly refastened the loosened laces. It was fine if the smell was on them, but they didn't want to make Yi Qian faint. Yi Qian, who had long been accustomed to getting along with the male soldiers, couldn't help but chuckle when she saw this. Very cute comrades. Since her sense of smell was also different from ordinary people, Yi Qian didn't say. Everyone continued to ignore her. In the words of Captain Xia, bear with it, don't destroy the ecological environment. 8 hours of free time was enough for them to return to the rendezvous point. Yi Jian, who had trained for half a year, which was equivalent to a year's training for female soldiers, sat on a stone covered with moss. She held a rifle and carried an umbrella on her back. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Her face, which was covered with black and blue camouflage paint, contained a peaceful smile. Captain Lei, who reminded the soldiers to pay attention, turned his head and saw the female soldier who had persevered for half a year and didn't give up. She closed her eyes and her smile was exceptionally beautiful. She didn't look like a person who was quite ruthless to herself. The female soldier, who was the polar opposite of her inner self, had already captured the admiration of a bunch of male soldiers. Xiao Tu, Guan Cheng, Ding Xiaoping, and Jiang Hua, the 4 special scouts, were the leaders. The 4 of them were even the instructors in charge of Yi Jian's training. Now, they wished they could call Yi Jian their brother. Especially after seeing Yi Qian's amazing marksmanship, Captain Lei couldn't bear to look directly at her. Although he couldn't bear to look directly at her, he had to admit that Yi Qian really had a charm that made people pledge their lives to follow her. She was a natural-born soldier, born to wear the military uniform. Now, she had used half a year to complete the 6 major levels of training. Combined with her training in the army, she could fly in the sky at any time and beat the male soldiers several times in a row. Chapter 51-57. Captain Lei looked at her for a long time. Yi Qian opened her eyes and met Captain Lei's eyes. She quickly straightened up and sat upright. Captain Lei got up and walked towards Yi Qian with a smile. Don't be nervous, don't be nervous. Captain Lei, who walked over with a smile, saw Yi Qian sitting upright, and his eyes deepened. Come, sit and chat. Yi Qian respected Captain Lei very much. He always put his own life and death aside. In the face of danger, he always said, "Back off, I'll do it." He used his own flesh and blood to pave a way for the soldiers. Such a selfless spirit made Yi Qian admire him very much. After Captain Lei sat down, Yi Qian sat down again. Congratulations first. After enduring humiliation for half a year, congratulations on finally getting out of the sea of bitterness. Captain Lei, who sat down, said in a bright voice. Several special scouts around him had their eyes on Yi Qian. They should indeed congratulate him. After Captain Lei finished speaking, they went over to congratulate him. Concealing his strength for half a year without being discovered by the female soldiers, his disguise was also quite powerful. They had suspected him before, but the captain immediately resolved it. Yi Qian, who had always been rejected by the female soldiers, returned to the team this time. Those female soldiers had a good time. They were waiting to see a good show on stage. Thanks to Xiao Tu and the other 3 instructors, all the scouts in the company knew that Yi Jian, who was hiding her strength, was ostracized by the female soldiers. They even secretly went to take a look, and then all of them came back with shocked faces. If Yi Qian, who trained with the female soldiers, was replaced by the male soldiers, he would be beaten up in minutes. It was really not easy to pretend to be so stupid. Now the king had returned. When the time came, they must go and see the female soldiers' shocked expressions. But now what they saw was Yi Qian's shocked expression. Even his calm eyes widened slightly. You're almost done with the apprenticeship? No more tests? Has it been half a year? Half a year passed so quickly? Why did she feel like it was too fast? She didn't feel anything at all. Her shocked expression of disbelief made Captain Lei feel more and more amused. Ha ha ha, you female soldier really has a bit of personality. What's wrong? Do you think you haven't trained hard enough? It's been 6.5 months. It's half a month longer than expected. Yi Qian's eyes widened this time. Half a month of training, she didn't feel anything. I really don't feel anything, Yi Qian whispered. This reaction put pressure on Captain Lei. Yi, do you know how much training you'll have in the next 4.5 months? 24 hours. Your average training time is 17.6 hours. 1 day of training is equivalent to 2 days of training for the female soldiers. They have 1 day of rest a week. You've been training non-stop for 4.5 months. The training is so big that even I, as the captain, am afraid you'll leave. You don't feel anything? Yi Qian, oh Yi Qian, you're so good. Do the male soldiers in the old army know that? Yi Qian didn't know if he didn't mention it. Once he mentioned it, she felt that she might have gone a bit too far. She thought for a while, pursed her lips and said, I trained until I went crazy. That's why I feel like time is passing so slowly. Chapter 51-58. In fact, that was not the case. Sometimes she felt that time passed very slowly, mostly because she missed Captain Xia. But such times were rare. The mission was heavy, and she wanted to return to the team as soon as possible. There was not much time for romance. In the blink of an eye, she and Captain Xia had not seen each other for 6.5 months. They parted at the end of spring, and now it was autumn. Division Commander Kong has also been waiting for this day. He hopes that you can dampen the spirit of the female soldiers in the coming days, and then crush them in all aspects to bring out the full potential of all the female soldiers. Although our country already has a female airborne team, it is still not enough. Compared to Western countries, our Air Force's special forces are still lacking. We have to continue to expand the special forces. This new force is our second female airborne team. The higher-ups have great hopes. China's first female airborne team was established in the early 1990s. In 1995, this female airborne team appeared in front of more than 20 military officials in China for a military training. Captain Lei, who had been in the army for nearly 10 years, was fortunate enough to witness it. Even though many years had passed, the memory was still fresh. Yi Qian did not understand, so Captain Lei talked about the past. Several types of airborne parachutes can control the parachute to land accurately at the center, not even half a centimeter off. In the live firing, they used automatic rifles, semi-automatic rifles, miniature submachine guns, heavy machine guns, and light machine guns to hit the air balloons within 200 meters. All of them hit the first target, shooting accurately at 40 targets at different distances from 7 types of target. Once a bullet was fired, it hit the target. Not a single bullet was off. That was really the most spiritual military training performance I have ever seen. I never had the chance to see it again. Also, they were the first female soldiers in the history of our army to complete a new type of parachute from our country's newly developed large transport aircraft. They were heroines. Yi Qian, who heard it for the first time, heard it and her eyes shone brightly. As soon as Captain Lei finished, she exclaimed, "If there is a chance, I really want to meet them." As soon as she finished speaking, Captain Lei smiled mysteriously. "You want to meet them? That's easy. You join our Air Force, and I will immediately report your needs to Division Commander Kong. Believe me, you will be able to meet them in less than half a month." He was trying to entice Yi Qian to join the Air Force. Fortunately, Yi Qian's state of mind was stable. She was determined to be faithful to her husband. In the face of temptation, she firmly resisted and said, "Then forget it. I can be fascinated." "What's so good about being fascinated? You have to go." "Fascination is more mysterious, and I prefer mystery." He shook his head firmly. Captain Lei looked at him for a while and silently retracted his gaze. "He's really stubborn. It doesn't make sense. Division Commander, I'm sorry." Over the past half a year, I've lured Yi Jian into the airborne troops countless times, but all of them ended in failure. This time, I'll continue to fail. Pausing for a moment, he said, "What kind of magic does the unit you're going to have that you're so loyal to it? Our company is really not bad. I'm not bragging, but the Airborne Special Forces Scouts are really the spearhead of the airborne troop. Why can't they attract you?" How strange. How could a unit that she had never been to be so attractive to her? Chapter 51-59. This time, Division Commander Kong did not have the time to ask Captain Lei. He was busy. The drill in the depths of the forest had ended. The victory of the red team and the blue team had been decided. The leaders were quite satisfied with the whole process of the drill, especially the leaders of the red team. Other than giving opinions and criticism in certain areas, they could still occasionally smile every day, which meant that the red team leader was in a good mood. As for the blue team leader who lost, his mood was definitely not very good. However, he still had the demeanor of a general. Facing the winner, the blue team leader pointed to one of their combat areas, which was also where the blue team's corps was located. "Old Kong, you used a surprise attack here and caused our command center to be completely wiped out. Tell me, which regiment's airborne troops came out to wipe out my headquarters?" Division Commander Kong smiled, and 2 wrinkles appeared at the corner of his eyes. "They're all airborne troops from my division. Why, you still want to find an excuse after losing." Although Captain Lei and the others were airborne Special Forces scouts, they were not independent like the Snowfield Brigade. All the Special Forces belonged to the military region and followed the entire division for the drill, so it would not arouse anyone's suspicion. Captain Lei and the others were a sharp knife of the military region, and it was a sharp knife that was not known to the outside world. Even the blue team leader did not know. The blue team leader was not so easy to fool. The blue team's corps was heavily guarded, and the entire airspace was monitored. In the end, it was still taken down by the red team's surprise attack, and it was completely wiped out. How could there not be something fishy about it? Old Kong, you're not honest. You like to stir up everything and fish in troubled waters. There's nothing fishy about it. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child? Division Commander Kong did not take Lan Fang's words to heart at all. He was secretly happy in his heart, and his face had a pained expression. Old fan, we've had 4 exercises, haven't we? It wasn't easy for me to win one. I can understand that you, the winner of 10,000 years, are embarrassed. But you can't think that I used a surprise attack just because you lost once. Fine, even if it's a surprise attack, it's still my division's troops. I can't run to another division to send troops to ambush you. This maneuver was between 2 divisions. The maneuver site covered the foothills of 3 provinces. The foothills had the characteristics of mountain climate and forest microclimate. In August, the foothills and jungles were dyed red. The overlapping scenery was as beautiful as a fairyland. It was just the beginning of autumn. It was the time when the pine and bamboo were dark, the maple leaves were light yellow, the branches were full of fruits, and all kinds of herbs were fragrant. When the soldiers in the exercise were hungry, they could occasionally pick some wild fruits to eat. Seeing that he couldn't get anything out of him, and knowing that Old Kong, who had lost to him in Guan Lai, had a clamshell mouth, Division Commander Fan decided not to probe any further. When he got back, he would look into it himself. In the past few years, they had practiced 4 times, and Old Kong had lost 3 times in a row. On the 4th time, he had suddenly made a beautiful comeback, and the blue team had not even been able to figure out who had ambushed them. Division Commander Fan really felt that he had lost face. Investigate, he had to investigate. He wanted to see what kind of secret weapon Old Kong was hiding after losing 3 times in a row. If Division Commander Kong did not even have the ability to conceal the strength of a single division, then he should step down from the position of Division Commander. At the end of the maneuver, the two divisions returned to their respective teams. Commander Fan even went to the Red Team camp to take a stroll. Where were the surprise troops? The surprise troops had not been discovered. With a wave of his hand, he said, "I won't look any more. Return to the team, return to the team." As for Yi Qian, with a wave of his hand, Division Commander Kong boarded the plane and returned to the team. Chapter 5160. The mountain where the exercise was held was located at the junction of East China and Central China, and part of it was located in the southwest. Flying back in a straight line would take them through several provinces, not to mention the need to refuel along the way. Also, the large transport aircraft chose to fly at night, taking off at 6 in the evening, and arriving at the base directly at dawn the next day. The exercise lasted 7 days, plus the actual travel time, a total of 9 days. In other words, Yi Qian would have been away from the female soldier class for exactly 9 days. After not appearing in the class for 9 days, the female soldiers were much calmer than the previous 3 days. 9 days without seeing Yi Qian, it seemed that he had really left. The squad leader and deputy squad leader also thought that Yi Qian had left the airborne troops and returned to the original army. 9 days ago, after the training ended, Captain Lei came personally with a dark face to take Yi Qian away. He only said, "I'll take him away first." Without any other explanation, he took Yi Qian away. All the female soldiers thought that Yi Qian would return to the dormitory around 1 in the morning as usual. In the end, when the whistle blew the next morning, Fang Xing was the first to realize that Yi Qian had not returned. The bedding was square, and the bed was so flat that there was not a single wrinkle. Everyone knew that Yi Qian was taken away by Captain Lei last night, so the female soldiers did not think much of it and reported it to the squad leader. The squad leader only said, "Got it." They thought that Yi Qian would return during the day, but he did not. He still did not return at night. The squad leader hurried to find Captain Lei. The soldier on duty told the squad leader that Captain Lei had something to do and would not return for about 10 days. She went to find Instructor Luo again, but could not find him. No one knew where Yi Qian went. A living person seemed to have disappeared after being taken away. No trace could be found. Another night passed uneasily. The next day Yi Qian still did not return. The female soldiers were all nervous. They had not seen him for 2 nights. Where did he go? The squad leader also began to panic. As the squad leader, she did not know where her soldier went. How could she not panic? It was not until the instructor sent someone over that she found out that Captain Lei had taken Yi Qian out of the army. The specific reason was not convenient to disclose, so she told the female soldiers not to worry and that nothing would happen to him. It turned out that she was taken out by Captain Lei. The squad leader's suspended heart finally settled down. After telling the female soldiers, the guesses followed. That night, when Captain Lei came over, his face was so dark that I didn't even dare to look at him. Coming over to take Yi Qian away, it can't be anything good. When is Captain Lei's face not dark? But every time they met, Yi Qian's face turned darker and his voice turned colder. It's obvious that Captain Lei also has a lot of opinions about Yi Qian. Do you think Captain Lei sent Yi Qian back to her old unit? She's not allowed to stay? Sigh, there is such a possibility. I'll personally send her back to her old unit, which is why I need some time. In the blink of an eye, more than half a year has passed. Time flies. It's been half a year. Yi Qian did not return for 3 days in a row. The female soldiers seemed to think that Yi Qian was sent back to his original unit by Captain Lei. Even the squad leader thought so. In private, the female soldiers did not discuss it anymore, but they were much quieter than usual. At noon and at night, when they returned to the dormitory for rest, their gazes would occasionally look at the upper bunk that had been empty for a few days. The corners of their mouths would be slightly pressed together, and their eyes were dark and unclear. The atmosphere in the dormitory was not so good. It was slightly gloomy, and even Lu Hui was not as talkative as usual. After being together for half a year, although she hoped that Yi Qian would leave the class quickly every day, when he really left, she did not feel so good in her heart. Well, it was indeed good. During the training during the day, they were not held back by Yi Qian. To put it bluntly, it was also because they were not used to having one less person in the team. Chapter 51-61. On the 5th and 6th day they gradually got used to it. On the 7th, 8th, and 9th day, they all accepted that Yi Qian had returned to his original unit. Things were set in stone. The weak Yi Qian had really left. On the night of the 9th day, Lu Hui came back from training and looked at the empty top bunk. She smiled and asked Fang Xing, "Does it feel good to sleep alone? From now on, you won't have to worry about anyone dragging you down." Fang Xing didn't answer immediately. She thought for a while and nodded. She didn't talk much and her quiet personality was quite likable. "When Captain Lei comes back, we'll clean up your top bunk." Lu Hui patted the empty top bunk and said, "She's finally gone. In the future, we don't have to worry about whether she's going to die at any time, and we don't have to worry about being a burden anymore." Fang Xing didn't respond, but her expression was a little unnatural. She wasn't used to participating in this kind of conversation. "From now on, none of us will have to worry about being paired up with Yi Qian. 14 people, 7 pairs. We don't have to take turns to partner with her." The one who spoke was Tang Lian. She still had lingering fears when she thought about the few times she had partnered with Yi Qian. "I was really scared. Now I feel relaxed. We don't have to worry anymore." Li Xiushui was about to speak when Guochui said coldly, "It's all done. She's gone, so it's time to shut up. If the class leader hears this, you guys will be punished. Don't mention Yi Qian's name in the future. Other than being unable to keep up with the training, she didn't do anything wrong." The cold voice made the atmosphere in the dormitory suddenly drop. Lu Hui pulled a long face and wanted to say something, but Tang Lian quickly stopped her and said, let's not talk about it. She's not in our class, what else can we talk about?" She winked at Li Xiushui. Li Xiushui understood and quickly walked to Guochui's side. She held her arm and said, "Let's wash up together. You've been tired all day and rest early. There might be an emergency gathering tonight." Emergency gatherings were common. Sometimes there would be 3 gatherings in a night. These days it was even 4 times. Lu Hui couldn't swallow her words. She snorted at Guochui, who was about to wash up. "What did you think I wanted to say? Speaking ill of Yi Qian? Do you all remember the bet I made before? If one day Yi Qian surpasses me, I will kneel down and kowtow to her. Now that he's gone, it's my win." Guochui, who had walked to the door, paused. Li Xiushui, who was behind her, quickly pushed her away. All right. Lu Hui has always been like that. She's also unforgiving. Why are you arguing with her? Besides, your relationship with her is even better than Yi Qian's. Now that Yi Qian is gone, you and Lu Hui are still comrades in the same class. Why ruin your friendship for someone who's already gone? Let her say a few more words. It's not a big deal to gain the upper hand, right? Let's go, let's take a shower and calm down. In September, the temperature in the southwest region was very low at night. When one spoke, one's breath would come out in white mist. A gust of cold wind blew through the corridor, and a strong chill came over. Guochui, who was flustered, calmed down. "I'll go back and say something." Carrying the basin, Guochui said in a low voice. She turned around and walked back to the dormitory. Li Xiushui was afraid that she was going to quarrel with Lu Hui and frighten her. She hurriedly pulled her back. Don't. If you have something to say it later. I won't quarrel. Don't worry." Guochui dodged and walked back to the dormitory in a few steps. Lu Hui, who was still preparing to wash up, turned her head and snorted coldly. "What? You want to educate me?" Chapter 5162. Guichue stood at the door and didn't come in. She sighed and said, I don't mean to educate you. I just feel that since Yi Qian is gone, we should let bygones be bygones. She softened her tone, and Lu Hui's expression changed for the better. She pursed her lips and said, Okay, I understand what you mean. I just wanted to be proud of myself. I didn't even get the chance to start before you poured a bucket of cold water on me. You're really… Guichue didn't know what to say. She's a paratrooper who started from zero. How can she beat you, a 2-year soldier? You still have the face to be proud of yourself. Don't you feel ashamed? What's there to be ashamed of? She couldn't beat me in the first place. Lu Hui held her chin high. Ashamed? Not at all. Li Xiushui, Tang Lian, and the quiet Fang Xing all breathed a sigh of relief. They were afraid that the two of them would quarrel. Why aren't you guys washing up with your basins? The hot water supply only lasts for 10 minutes. Are you guys planning to take a cold shower? When the vice squad leader came back, she saw that the female soldiers were all standing with their basins in their hands. She also saw that they were smiling. She didn't know what happened and smiled as well. You guys are in a good mood. Looks like you guys aren't afraid of the emergency gathering at night. The matter was over. They smiled and quickly washed up. They had to hurry up with the 10 minutes of hot water supply. There wouldn't be any overnight grudges between comrades. If there really was a grudge, it was easy to talk about it. They could come out and fight. They could solve the 400-meter obstacle course together. They could also have a good fight in the sandpit. The night grew darker. The cold stars in the sky seemed to have been carefully scrubbed. They were bright and cold. A large transport plane flew across the vast night sky. It was like a small bird, not at all as large as when it was on the ground. Yi Qian sat in the transport plane and hugged his equipment. If he lived, the equipment would be there. If he died, the equipment would be destroyed. At 2:00 in the morning, the transport plane landed at a provincial military airport to refuel. The paratroopers of the reconnaissance company had about half an hour to move around. Yi Qian came down and took a deep breath of the cold air. He was much more awake. If he arrived at the army camp around 7:30 in the morning, he would still be able to make it in time for the morning training. He hoped that the female soldiers would not be too surprised by his return. The military airport was brightly lit, and planes of various models lined up neatly like sentinels. Yi Qian's gaze fell on the edge of the airport, and the planes were all covered with a special protective cover. Those were the fighter planes of our country. After walking around the designated area, it was time to board the plane again. When they walked out of the transport plane again, the sun was shining brightly outside. The sky was blue, and even the cold wind that blew in their faces was particularly cold. Taking a deep breath, Yi Qian caught up with the rest of the troop. They gathered in formation, returned their equipment, and left in an orderly manner. 121, 121. Passing by the sports field, Yi Qian heard the familiar command. The smile in his eyes deepened. She also had to go back to the female soldier class for training. The sound of hurried running came and quickly stopped beside Yi Qian. Yi Qian stepped out of the formation. The person who caught up with him gasped for breath and smiled. Captain forgot to tell you. Go to his office later. He has something important to tell you. What important thing? Lifting the red cover, Yi Qian saw his epaulets and badges neatly placed in a box padded with a black velvet cloth. Chapter 5163. The color of gold and dark green was so solemn that it made Yi Qian hold his breath a little. Yi Qian slowly raised his eyes and finally looked at Captain Lei's face. He asked, Captain, what are you, returning it to its rightful owner? I finally don't need to keep it anymore. Captain Lei laughed and said. Suddenly, his face turned serious. Yi Qian, here. Yi Qian straightened his back and looked solemn. Captain Lei picked up the epaulet that originally belonged to Yi Qian and was temporarily deposited in his hands for special reasons. He said, I hope you can continue to work hard and create more glory. Here, you will also add a strong color to our airborne troop. Let the female soldiers know that the female soldier they ostracized before is not an ordinary female soldier, but a special female soldier who can crush them in just half a year. You are a qualified airborne special reconnaissance soldier. On behalf of all the officers and men of the Special Reconnaissance Company, I welcome your arrival. Captain Lei took off the corporal epaulet on Yi Qian's shoulder and replaced it with a captain epaulet with 1 bar and 3 stars. Then he tidied up Yi Qian's lapel. Captain Lei took a step back and raised his hand to salute. Yi Qian raised his hand and returned the salute with a beautiful face and clear eyes. Then, Captain Lei took out a small box and opened it. There was a small umbrella emblem in the box. I hope you can keep the glory that belongs to you well. In the future, when you leave the airborne troops, please remember that this land has traces of your struggle. The umbrella emblem was the symbol of a paratrooper's identity. Yi Qian took a step forward and took the umbrella emblem condensed from his blood and sweat. His clear eyes were full of determination. Remember the mission, don't forget your original intention. Remember the mission, don't forget your original intention, forge ahead, and vow to fight for first place. Well, I believe you will remember the mission. You go first, I will come later. With a smile in his eyes, Captain Lei no longer doubted Yi Qian's strength. He had seen it with his own eyes. Why should he doubt it? Next, the ones who would really doubt their lives were the group of female soldiers who once ostracized Yi Qian. He believed that he would be able to see the expressions on the female soldiers' faces later. Yi Qian walked out of Captain Lei's office. She did not go to the field immediately, but went to the dormitory. She had to put down the small box with the umbrella emblem. There were sentries standing guard in front of the dormitory. When they saw Yi Qian, they immediately saluted him. Yi Qian was no longer a corporal, but a captain, so he could receive a military salute from the sentries. At this moment, the female soldiers were completing their morning training. Multitasking was the basic requirement for a qualified paratrooper. The intensity of their training was no different from that of the male soldiers. Squats, frog jumps, punching sandbags, horse stance, brick pushing, and other basic training requirements were all the same as the male soldiers. The number of squats, frog jumps, and punching sandbags that the male soldiers did every day was the same as the female soldiers. Ha! 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 The rows of sandbags hanging on the iron poles were lifted by the female soldiers and punched fiercely. The weight of the sandbags was exactly 150 kilograms. The male soldiers could kick the sandbags away directly with a side kick. The female soldiers were weaker and could also kick the sandbags away, but the range was not as big as the male soldiers. 100 punches and 100 kicks were basic training that had to be completed in the morning. Yi Qian quickly found the place where the female soldiers were training. Second class, Yi Qian reporting for duty. The clear and bright voice had a strong penetrating power. It suppressed the sounds of ha-ha with a cold tone, so that every female soldier who was kicking the sandbags could hear it. The somewhat unfamiliar yet somewhat familiar voice made the female soldiers' movements stagnate. A name appeared in the minds of every female soldier who heard the voice. Yi Qian. Chapter 5164. The familiar yet unfamiliar voice could not be matched with the name that appeared in their minds. As a result, every female soldier who was frozen in place had a confused expression on their faces. Yi Qian's voice? Yi Qian himself? How was that possible? Didn't he leave? How could he still hear her voice? But that's not right, she said, Yi Qian from 2nd Squad reporting for duty, so it must be Yi Qian. The female soldiers who were kicking the sandbags on the innermost side could not immediately turn their heads to look at the outermost side. As for the female soldiers on the outermost side, such as Lu Hui, Guo Chui, and the other leaders, they heard the familiar yet unfamiliar voice. When they heard Yi Qian from 2nd Squad reporting for duty, they quickly turned their heads to look at the person who had come. Yi Qian. Lu Hui, who was kicking with one foot on the ground and her left foot in the air, cried out in surprise, "Why are you back?" She was so shocked that her lower body became unstable. She was already standing on one foot, so she lost her balance and fell towards the sandbags with her own cry of surprise. Ouch! She had scared herself again. She reacted quickly and hugged the sandbags that were dented by her kick. Only then was she able to stabilize herself. She was not the only one who was shocked. She called out Yi Jian and then asked, "Why did you come back again?" which shocked the female soldiers who were closest to the center. The voice they heard was really Yi Qian. She really was back. The female soldiers who saw Yi Jian at the same time as Lu Hui were all horrified, as if they had seen a ghost. Because every kick was uniform and neat, almost all of them had the same situation as Lu Hui. They fell head first and hugged the sandbag to prevent themselves from falling. That's right, it looked like Yi Qian, but why did it feel like it wasn't Yi Qian? Guo Chui, who had staggered a step, steadied herself. When she saw who it was, she was pleasantly surprised, then bewildered. She said in disbelief, "Yi Qian, is that you?" It was the exact same face. It was so familiar, yet it felt so foreign to her. It was as if she had never known Yi Qian before. Is it Yi Qian? Very similar. At the very least, they looked exactly the same. However, they couldn't feel a trace of familiarity from her. The only familiarity was that she looked exactly the same. Even with a microscope, they couldn't find any difference in her face. Her face was familiar, but the clear expression between her brows made her feel like a stranger. What was even stranger was her temperament, her imposing military might, and her oppressive aura. The Yi Qian she was familiar with did not have such a frightening military might that she did not dare to look directly at. After asking once, the bewildered Guo Chui asked even more carefully, "You're Yi Qian, right?" "I'm Guo Chui. Do you know me?" She suspected that the familiar face in front of her was not the Yi Qian she knew. It was too different, with a completely different temperament. Even if the face was exactly the same, there was no way she could believe that the person in front of her was the Yi Qian she knew. Guo Chui did not believe it, and the shocked Lu Hui did not believe it either. She took 2 steps at a time. She wanted to rush up to Yi Qian to take a good look, but Fang Xing reminded her in a low voice, "Look at her military rank." Look at her military rank? Lu Hui, who was only looking at the face, looked away. "Oh my God! Captain!" However, Lu Hui had rushed forward too quickly, and could not stop in time. She ended up spinning in a comical circle, and stood dangerously in front of Guo Chui, blocking her view. She immediately said, "Sorry, I mistook you for someone else." Chapter 5165. The rank of captain, rank insignia, and age insignia all told her that she had mistaken him for someone else. Lu Hui immediately adjusted her posture, and stood as straight as a spear. Her expression was serious, but her gaze was still drifting. Mistaken him for someone else? Did she really mistake him for someone else? Isn't he Yi Qian? But that face is exactly the same. Is she Yi Qian's older sister? Younger sister? Almost 100% similar? Guo Chui, whose line of sight was blocked, coughed softly. "Why are you standing there in a daze? Come back." Did she mistake him for someone else? That's not possible. Twins? Yi Qian's older or younger sister? The class leader didn't stand at the outermost part of the group. She walked out from the innermost part. The moment she saw Yi Qian, she was just as shocked as Lu Hui and the other female soldiers. She was sure she didn't hear wrong. Who was reporting in? Yi Jian, who had a panoramic view of all the expressions and actions of the female soldiers, looked straight ahead calmly. From this moment on she, who had returned to report, was the real Yi Jian. A Yi Jian who had memorized all the rules and regulations of the army and would not allow herself to make mistakes at any time. She heard Guichui ask her if she was Yi Qian, but she couldn't answer before she saw the class leader. When the class leader appeared, Yi Qian raised her hands and saluted the class leader. Reporting in, class leader, Yi Qian from the second class reporting in. Lu Hui grabbed Guichui's arm with both hands. She was so shocked that her pupils constricted. She. Yi Jian. She stuttered until she didn't know what she wanted to say or what she had said. Stand still, don't move. Guichui's fingers were trembling. Yi Qian was back. It really was Yi Qian, a Yi Qian she was unfamiliar with, right? She said there was something wrong with Yi Qian, but no one believed her. No, they believed her for one night, but they didn't believe her the next day. She knew her intuition was right. There was something wrong with the old Yi Qian. Perhaps the old Yi Qian wasn't the real Yi Qian. The current Yi Qian was the real Yi Qian. No way, it's really Yi Qian. Why does she look like a different person? She hasn't changed, she's still Yi Qian. How hasn't she changed? Look at her clothes and her temperament. Is she the Yi Jian we know? She doesn't look like the Yi Qian. Did you suffer some kind of shock? Did she repent and turn over a new leaf? Was it really Yi Qian? Of course it was Yi Qian. If she said, Yi Qian from class 2 reporting, then it must be Yi Qian. Yes, Yi Qian who dragged the class down was back. Yi Qian who hadn't been seen for 9 days seemed like a different person. His return made them nervous and uneasy. It was as if a strong gust of wind had blown over. None of them could calm down. The class leader stood in front of Yi Qian, who had a higher rank, position, experience, and even military experience than her. She felt as if a strong gust of wind had blown over her and was about to get stronger. Yi cough. The class leader's voice was a little muffled, as if there was something stuck in her throat. She cleared her throat and continued, Yi Jian, right? Where have you been these past few days? She even asked cautiously. There was nothing she could do. Her rank, position, experience, and military experience were all higher than hers. As the class leader, she didn't have the confidence to ask. If the class leader didn't have the confidence, then what about the other female soldiers? That was even more so. Chapter 5166. There were 15 female soldiers in the squad. The highest rank was the squad leader, second lieutenant. The rest of the female soldiers were all first-class soldiers. Now that Yi Qian suddenly appeared with the rank of captain, his position, experience, and military experience were all higher than the squad leaders. The female soldiers were shocked and scared. They couldn't believe it and naturally lost confidence. Would a first-class soldier dare to point at a captain's nose and scold him? Unless they wanted to die, they definitely wouldn't dare. Even the squad leader was cautious with her questions, afraid that she would invite trouble. As for them, they obviously couldn't go over and ask for clarification. Moreover, wasn't the squad leader asking where Yi Qian went these past few days? It really was Yi Qian. Why did it feel like a dream? After disappearing for a few days, he could change so much. It was as if he had been washed inside and out, to the point that even his soul seemed to have changed. It was so mysterious that they still couldn't believe that the Yi Qian in the news was the Yi Qian they knew. I went out with Captain Lei for a drill. I only returned this morning. Yi Qian didn't hide where he went from the squad leader. The squad leader also knew about the drill. But when she found out that Yi Qian went missing for 9 days because Yi Qian had the qualifications to go to the drill, the squad leader was still stunned. Drill. She wanted to ask how you were qualified to go to the drill, but when she saw Yi Qian's military rank, the squad leader subconsciously shut her mouth to avoid triggering a landmine. Drill? Yi Qian said she went to the drill? Was it the drill they knew about? The female soldiers who were already bewildered now widened their eyes. Yi Qian went to the drill? Just her? Could she go? They subconsciously doubted it again, but they quickly suppressed their habitual doubts. Yi Qian wasn't the Yi Qian of the past. If she said she went to the drill, then she definitely had the qualifications to go. For a moment, the female soldiers' hearts were in a mess. They were so panicked that they didn't know where to start. Their hearts were beating up and down, accompanied by a chill down their backs. Yi Jian noticed that the class leader glanced at her epaulette and swallowed the words she wanted to say. She smiled and guessed what the class leader wanted to ask. Why don't they train first, and then I'll explain to the class leader? As she smiled slightly, the confidence in her eyes made her look even more picturesque. It was a beauty that even the best artist in the world couldn't draw out. Even the class leader, who was also a girl, was attracted by Yi Jian's smile and couldn't help but stare. In the past, Yi Qian was indeed beautiful, but after looking at her for a long time, one would feel that she was just like that. Without the support of inner beauty, no matter how beautiful she would not be able to attract one's attention for a long time. She would only be stunning at the time, but forgotten after a while. Today's Yi Qian made the class leader understand what kind of person was worthy of the word beauty. Not only was she born beautiful, but she also had a fierce and inviolable military might. This kind of beauty's heart was stunned, but it was also filled with reverence. Even if they were subdued by her beauty, they would not dare to be impudent. The class leader clenched her fists to pull back her train of thought. She turned around and said to the female soldiers behind her, who were so shocked that they still could not believe that the Yi Qian in front of them was the Yi Qian they knew, "Continue training." Yes. Their voices were in unison and their momentum was like a rainbow. Vice class leader. Here. The vice class leader who was training with them also quickly ran out from the innermost area. She stopped at attention and waited for the class leader's orders. I was distracted just now. Everyone will train overtime for 30 minutes. Yes. The vice class leader who came out only slightly glanced at Yi Qian when she ran over. When she received the class leader's order, she saluted and retreated. She saluted first to the class leader, then to Yi Qian. Yi Qian raised his hand to return the salute. Only then did the vice class leader withdraw her arm and leave. Everyone, train with sandbags for 30 minutes. Yes. Chapter 5167. The vice squad leader shouted coldly. All the female soldiers in the class answered with their heads held high. None of them complained about the extended training time. Guichui quietly tugged at Lu Hui, who was the only one who remained silent. Are you still in a daze? Continue training. She pulled at Lu Hui twice before she snapped back to reality. Watching the two figures leave, Lu Hui twisted her stiff neck. It's really her. It's really Yi Qian. Why does she seem like a different person? Also, how did she become a captain? How did her seniority and military service become the highest? She couldn't figure out the crux of the matter. Lu Hui couldn't figure it out. Guichui couldn't figure it out either. But she knew that things were different now. From now on, Lu Hui, watch your mouth. Yi Qian. Guichui pursed her lips with a serious expression. She lowered her eyes and reminded Lu Hui in a low voice. I told you that Yi Qian wasn't right from the start. Now you've seen it for yourself. As a captain in the army, she joined the airborne unit. There must be some inside story. You've said too much in the past and it's become a habit. If you don't stop talking, you'll be the one at a disadvantage. Also, don't forget the boast you made in front of Yi Qian. If you keep your word, Yi Qian might see you in a different light. Guichui's expression and voice were exceptionally serious. She even sounded nervous as if she was facing a formidable enemy. Lu Hui's heart skipped a beat as if it was about to jump out of her chest. Calming herself down, Lu Hui slowly shook her head. No. If Yi Qian really came with a motive and everything she did was to disguise herself, then it can only be said that her disguise was too good and too successful. She fooled all of us. I ostracized her and only picked on her during training. Other than that, I ignored her at most. I didn't do anything overboard. Incompetent people will be ostracized no matter where they go. This is a phenomenon that exists in society and even in every country. As a captain, I believe that Yi Qian wouldn't be so petty as to take revenge on an ordinary soldier like me. Of course, if she intentionally targeted or ostracized me during training, then she must have the ability to do so first. Don't forget, she's just a female soldier who transferred to my airborne unit half a year ago. I believe that I won't be surpassed or defeated by her. Lu Hui, who came from the 18th Air Division, had inherited the bloodthirsty heritage of the 18th Air Division. There were no cowards among the soldiers of the Air Division. If you want to pick a fight, then show me your true abilities. Her words made Guichui nod her head slightly. She was right. Lu Hui usually only ostracized Yi Qian during training. Although her words were harsh, it was only limited to training. Moreover, it wasn't that she didn't do anything. Instead, whenever she pointed out something wrong with Yi Qian, she would personally go on stage and demonstrate it. Then, she would make Yi Qian go through it again. She would only rest when Yi Qian passed. The entire female troop was against Yi Qian, but no one had ever attacked him personally. Thinking about it, Guichui calmed down a lot. The anxious female soldiers continued with their training. On the other side, Yi Qian explained how she had participated in the exercise. Yi Qian didn't say anything else. Even when the squad leader brought Yi Qian back for training, she still didn't understand why Yi Qian had joined the airborne unit. Lu Hui had been paying attention to Yi Qian's movements. When she saw Yi Qian return, she stared at her even more intently. She wanted to know if there were any other changes to Yi Qian since she had returned as a different person. For example, would there be any changes to her basic training that she had never passed? In the past, Yi Qian couldn't even kick a sandbag until it was too horrible to look at. His posture was still and his strength was weak. He couldn't even kick a 150-pound sandbag. Who knew that with just one look, Lu Hui was almost scared to the ground. Chapter 5168. When Lu Hui saw that Yi Qian had returned and seemed to have the intention to continue training with them, she immediately wanted to take a good look at her. It was easy to change one's appearance. Putting on an act and putting on an act while forcing one's heart to remain strong, it was very easy to change one's appearance. However, one's ability was not something that could be determined by putting on an act and putting on an act. Since she had returned in a different appearance, she naturally wanted to take a good look at her with a lot of doubts in her heart. Lu Hui was a member of the female soldier class. In the past, like all the other female soldiers, she would reject Yi Qian during every training session. In their hearts, Yi Qian was a female soldier who couldn't even pass basic training and whose overall ability was so weak that it was unbearable to look at. Therefore, every time Yi Qian, who was a hindrance, went up for training, she would be closely watched by the female soldiers. Once she made a mistake, they would immediately point it out without mercy. In order to disguise herself, Yi Qian had shown weakness during all basic training sessions. Even though she had returned as a changed person, the female soldier's impression of Yi Qian as weak individual ability and weak acceptance did not immediately change. After showing weakness for half a year, Yi Qian's incompetent image had long been deeply ingrained in the female soldiers' hearts. How could they change their impression of her in such a short time? At this moment, the female soldiers saw that Yi Qian did not give them any time to rest and immediately threw themselves into training. The female soldiers' eyes were already on Yi Qian when she came over with the squad leader. Is she planning to train with us? Of course, isn't she already here? Then is she still a member of our paratroopers? She's clearly a captain in the army. Why would she come to our paratroopers? Who knows? Don't talk about it. I think she glanced at us. Don't scare me. We're still so far away. How could she see us? Even so, they did not discuss it in secret anymore. Following the vice squad leader's command, all the female soldiers switched from kicking the sandbags with their right legs to kicking the sandbags with their left legs. Their bodies, which were originally facing inward, were now facing outward. This way, they did not need to deliberately turn their heads and could directly look at Yi Qian from the corner of their eyes. Would she really train with them? As Yi Qian's figure got closer and closer to them, the surprise in the female soldier's eyes grew darker and darker. Aside from the change in her temperament, was there any other change in her? External changes, then what about internal changes? Were there any changes? Poor foundation, poor ability to adapt. These were all internal factors that represented a person's strength. Would her strength also change after such a huge change? He could change his appearance and put on an act, but on the inside, he would immediately know what he was capable of. As Yi Qian got closer and closer to the sandbag training area, the female soldiers who were watching Yi Qian from the corner of their eyes couldn't help but have their eyes flicker. He's here, he's here. Yi Qian, who hadn't changed much in 9 days, is really planning to train with us. Yi Qian's rank, position, experience, and military experience were all much higher than theirs. They couldn't wait to find out how strong Yi Qian was after such a huge change in her appearance. They wanted to know if she was hiding her strength, like how she hid her identity. Most of the female soldiers were still skeptical, but no one stood out to question Yi Qian's identity. The military's military ranks were strictly controlled, and no soldier dared to forge a military rank. The female soldiers did not suspect that Yi Qian's military rank was fake. They only suspected that Yi Qian's strength matched her military rank. Chapter 5169. Yi Jian, who had returned to the team, did not give herself any time to rest. The male soldiers who had participated in the maneuver had already started training. Naturally, she could not do anything special. As a member of the female soldier class, she would do the same as the female soldiers. Regardless of whether it was a paratrooper or an infantry soldier, they all had to do basic training such as kicking sandbag. They had to complete it every day and couldn't miss a single day. The returning Yi Qian would be trained the same way as the returning Yi Qian. She knew that the female soldiers were all looking at her out of the corner of their eyes. Their gazes were filled with curiosity. Right now, they were filled with curiosity towards her after she returned. They were also filled with the desire to find out more about her. They were eager to find out what she had become. Had her identity changed? Was her personal strength still so weak that they could point out her mistakes at any time? She could understand their feelings. Who asked her to be so cowardly and incompetent in the past? Division Commander Kong's calculations were accurate. It was a good thing for female soldiers to be arrogant, but if their arrogance became sharper, it would hinder their potential. Therefore, they needed a whetstone to appear to dampen their arrogance, drive, and conceit. And she was the whetstone that Division Commander Kong had specifically mentioned. In order to improve her personal combat ability, she was willing to become Division Commander Kong's whetstone. She walked to the empty sandbag and leaned slightly to the side. She clenched her fists and stood in a fighting stance. The aura around her changed at any time. She was fierce and visible to the naked eye. The female soldiers who were paying attention to her suddenly tensed up, and Lu Hui was almost scared to the ground. It's different, it's different. It's really different. The Yi Qian training room in the past didn't have such a fierce aura. The Yi Qian in the past was clearly an unqualified soldier. She was clearly a soldier who would drag the class down. But now, she hadn't even kicked yet. Just her momentum alone was enough to let everyone know that she was very capable. Very capable. The squad leader who was watching her suddenly had a complicated look in her eyes. This posture, it was nothing like the bent posture she used to have. Her posture was standard and her aura was fierce. It made her, the squad leader, inexplicably shiver in her heart. Yi Qian, who had made all the necessary preparations, shouted along with the female soldiers. With a fierce look in her eyes, She raised her left leg and ferociously slammed it into the 150-pound sandbag. Boom! The sandbag hit by her left leg flew up high. The angle and height of the rise were the highest among the sandbags kicked by the female soldiers in the class. It was so high that all the female soldiers could see the sandbag kicked by Yi Jian at a glance. They could even see the dent on the sandbag that had not been flattened yet. Lu Hui looked at Gao Yang's sandbag and saw the dent in it. She then looked at Yi Qian, who even had a sharp look in his back. Lu Hui's pupils constricted. 1. Stand still. 2. He kicked out and shouted. 3. He retracted his leg. When the vice squad leader shouted 3, Yi Qian, who was completely focused on training, retracted his left leg and stood firmly. He no longer swayed as he did when he retracted his leg. Her posture was straight, her aura was imposing, her movements were fierce, and her gaze was fierce. This was the real Yi Qian, a female ace special forces soldier who had experienced countless life and death battles. Just one kick was enough to make the female soldiers feel a storm in their hearts. This Yi Qian, was this the real Yi Qian? Could a person really change that much? Did she change her outer appearance and even her inner self? Chapter 5170. The female soldiers were shocked. Faced with Yi Qian's sudden change, they were so shocked that they blinked their eyes fiercely and looked over again. It was still the same. The person who was kicking the sandbag so hard that it looked like it would fly away at any moment was really Yi Qian. Their eyes were not playing tricks on them. How could it be? How could it be? In the past, when Yi Qian kicked the sandbag, he would either not be able to keep up with the chant or he would fall down. Otherwise, his whole body would sway and shake more than the sandbag. But now, Yi Qian was the only one who could kick the sandbag away. Could it be that the Yi Qian they saw in the past was not the real Yi Qian? Was the Yi Qian they saw now the real Yi Qian? 1. Stand still. 2. Kick out and shout. 3. Pull back your leg. Yi Qian raised his left leg again and again, according to the assistant squad leader's command. Every movement was so precise, every movement was so swift and fierce. Again and again, he trained tirelessly. The female soldiers, who were shocked, looked away and kicked the sandbag seriously. They did not dare to look again. They could not even believe what they saw. How could it be? How could it be? How could she become so strong all of a sudden? Lu Hui, who was kicking the sandbag, murmured softly. Her mind was in a mess, like a ball of wool that had been scratched by a cat. She could not make sense of it anymore. After the punishment of kicking the sandbag for half an hour was over, the squad leader blew the whistle. The female soldiers, who did not have a single minute of rest, heard the whistle and reacted quickly. They dashed at the speed of a 500-meter sprint. A 500-meter sprint was not enough. They had to sprint a 1,000-meter sprint. Every time they finished the sandbag training, they, like the male soldiers, did not rest for a second. When the whistle blew, they all ran forward and competed to see who could reach the next training assembly point first. The next training was the one Yi Qian had received the most scoldings, the most supercilious looks, and the most ostracized. Every time, no one was willing to be her partner for the training. Although it was called training, it was actually a comprehensive basic training. It was a bit similar to the 400-meter steeplechase, but the stamina consumption was much higher than the comprehensive basic training of the 400-meter steeplechase. Paratroopers used aircraft and parachute to infiltrate the enemy's rear, assault and attack important targets. It was an assault force with fast mobility in the air and the ability to surpass geographical obstacles. It was also a troop class with the ability to land anywhere and fight in all aspects. Therefore, the training of the paratroopers was focused on the 3 points of speed, ferocity, and speed. The following training was a special training targeted at the 3 points of speed, ferocity, and speed. Quick! Keep up! Keep up! Did he not eat? Did he have no strength? Are you taking a walk? Are you too admiring the flowers as you walk? Do you want me to bring you a table, 2 chairs, and a pot of tea so you can sit and admire the flowers? Increase your speed. Quick! From time to time, the voices of the squad leader and vice squad leader could be heard from the running troops. The female soldiers who kicked the sandbags for half an hour gritted their teeth and ran towards the next assembly point, which was a kilometer away, sweating profusely. The southwest region was vast but sparsely populated. Even the training grounds for the troops were very, very large. The target practice was here, the physical training was there, and the tactical training was there. There were training grounds in all 4 directions, east, west, and south. Every run was a long run, and it was also a form of training. Lu Hui and a few other female soldiers who normally ostracized Yi Qian the most were already rubbing their hands together as they ran. They wanted to surpass Yi Qian in the following basic training. Chapter 51-71. Let's team up later. We'll team up in pairs of 6 and take the lead. Let's show her our true abilities. Lu Hui said in a low voice as she ran. The 5 female soldiers beside her were close to her and listening to her. I really want to know how strong Captain Yi is right now. It's impossible for me to admit that she's strong just by kicking a sandbag. Lu Hui had always dared to think and speak her mind. She was also one of the most impatient people in the class. Her mouth was also very sharp. What she said was also what the female soldiers were thinking. When they heard her, they quickly nodded to show that there was no problem. We've already done 3 pairs. There are still 4 pairs to go. We have to get them to team up quickly. When the time comes, she'll be alone. Let's see how she'll pass. Everything else is fine. The main thing is that the shooting at the 2 targets requires 2 people to work together to pass. If we team up with 14 people, she'll be the same person as before. This isn't too good. What's wrong with it? Lu Hui shook her head. We used to treat her like this. Now our attitude is still the same. We can't immediately become lackeys and coax her just because she's a captain now. If she wants us to accept her, sure, there's no problem at all. But first, she has to show that she has the ability to make us accept her. If she doesn't have the ability, even if she's a captain, I'll still be the same as before. Come, let's run first and take down her prestige. Deal. Good idea. Run. Lu Hui was a female soldier with a clear personality. She would never change her attitude just because the other party's status had changed. When the other female soldiers heard this, they all pursed their lips and laughed. That's right. They couldn't immediately change their attitude and coax her just because she was a captain now. They were special scouts in the airborne forces. They only knew how to talk with their strength. So what if she was a captain? What prestige could a captain with no strength have? They could respect her on the surface, but who would listen behind her back? There's still 400 meters left. Hurry! Chest out, head up, speed up. The squad leader's voice was like a demon's voice. She urged the female soldiers to run faster. Lu Hui, who wanted to be the first to kill Yi Qian, directly sprinted. She intended to fight for first place, and so did the other female soldiers. Yi Qian, who had always been in first place, was no exception. In the past, she was always the last one. By the time she got there, all the partners for the next training session would be done. There were 15 people in 7 pairs, and she was the only one left. Every time this happened, the class leader would pick someone else to partner with her. Every time this happened, Yi Qian would feel apologetic because she had to be a burden. Now, she thought that she could fight for first place, a first place where she could complete the rest of the training without a partner. She sped up again and again, leaving several female soldiers behind her in the blink of an eye. Her speed was so fast that it was like a gust of wind blowing past them. The female soldiers who had been overtaken by her didn't even see clearly who the shadow was. So fast! So fast! Looking at the illusory figure, he muttered subconsciously. Guichue, who felt a gust of wind blow past her, looked up and saw a shadow flash past her eyes. The astonishing speed made her stagnate, and a name flashed through her mind. Who could run so fast? Yi Qian. She thought of Yi Qian. She was very clear about the strength of all the female soldiers in the class. There was absolutely no one who was fast enough to turn into a shadow. Except for Yi Qian. Chapter 51-72. The figure, which was so fast that it almost became a blur, overtook several people, then swept past Lu Hui. Finally, it overtook the female soldiers at an astonishing speed and was only behind the class leader, who was the fastest in class. Lu Hui, who only felt a strong wind brushing past her, didn't have time to react. She saw a blur suddenly sweep past her from the corner of her eye. She, who was striving for first place, felt as if a large pot of ice water had been poured into her heart. She was caught off guard and shivered. Who ran so fast? Who overtook me? Her expression changed as she clenched her fists and gritted her teeth to increase her speed. She still had a chance to win. She still had a chance to win. Come on, Lu Hui. You can do it. Lu Hui, who was cheering for herself, stared at the two figures in front of her. One was the class leader, and the other was Yi Qian. Just now, the person who ran past her so fast that it almost became a blur was none other than Yi Qian, who had returned with a greatly changed appearance. The figure that overtook her was getting farther and farther away from her. It was too fast, so fast that she couldn't catch up even if she used all her strength and sprinted forward. She overtook her, overtook the class leader, who was the fastest in class, and finally overtook all the female soldiers to become the person running in front. At that moment, there was a trace of panic in Lu Hui's eyes. Someone who had always been inferior to her, who she looked down on, and who she ostracized, suddenly overtook her one day. What kind of feeling was that? It was a very, very unpleasant feeling. It was as if 100 ants were gnawing at her heart, and it was unbearable. Lu Hui couldn't accept it for a moment, and the other female soldiers were the same. The class leader looked at the figure that overtook her in the blink of an eye, and the complexity in her eyes deepened. Yi Qian, I'm afraid that the current Yi Qian is the real Yi Qian. She said that she wouldn't be staying in the airborne division for long. She said that she wasn't the real her half a year ago. She even asked for the class leader's forgiveness, but she also said that it wasn't convenient for her to reveal the reason. She said a lot, but it was as if she didn't say anything. As the class leader, she still didn't understand why Yi Qian came to the airborne division, and why she wasn't the real her half a year ago. Not the real her. Now she understood that it was referring to her strength. Half a year ago, the strength that Yi Qian had displayed was not her true strength. She had concealed it for some other reason. Her running figure was too dazzling. Even the sunlight seemed to be chasing after her footsteps. Wherever she passed, the light was as bright as the morning sun. That kind of Yi Qian was the real Yi Qian. The class leader chased after Yi Qian, her eyes shining brightly. She was looking for a challenge. She wanted to compete with Yi Qian and find out just how strong Yi Qian was when he was hiding his strength. Instead of retreating, the class leader became braver. She was the squad leader. If she didn't have any tolerance and was jealous of a soldier who was stronger than her, then she didn't deserve to be a qualified soldier. No, Yi Qian was not a soldier. She was a captain. A captain with a higher position and military experience than him. They were getting closer and closer to the next training assembly point. Yi Qian's running body was as light as the wind, and he arrived at the assembly point effortlessly. He stood still, turned around, and faced the dozens of running figures. Under the sunlight, the running figures were sweating profusely. They carried an unyielding stubbornness as they stepped on the sunlight and bathed in the cold September wind from the southwest until they reached the finish line. Yi Qian, who was the first to reach the assembly point, looked at the running figures. The running figures also looked at the figure waiting for them at the finish line. Chapter 51-73. Their eyes widened as they stared at the figure waiting for them. Everyone's expression changed dramatically. Yi Qian. The figure that overtook them was none other than the returning Yi Qian. She was the first to reach the finish line with a speed that crushed everyone else in class. Her speed was like the wind, shocking and horrifying. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that Yi Qian, who was always lagging behind and always right on the passing time, had actually overtaken everyone. He even overtook the class leader, who was the fastest. Their goal was to overtake the class leader. The army was a place where everyone strived to be the best. Everyone wanted to be the vanguard. Whoever was the vanguard or vanguard, no matter how high their rank was, would always be challenged. As long as the challenges were normal, the leaders would approve. Therefore, it was normal for the female soldiers to want to overtake the class leader. But now, the class leader wasn't overtaken by them, but by Yi Qian, who they used to look down on. Were they discouraged? A little bit. Were they jealous? Just a little bit. Were they surprised? They were still in shock. They didn't know if Yi Qian would give them any more surprises. The class leader was the second to reach the assembly point. She looked at Yi Qian, panted, and laughed. "Not bad, your running speed is quite amazing. Did you always get first place in your old unit?" "No, they all ran faster than me," Yi Qian replied with a smile. She subconsciously thought of the Snowfield Brigade as her old unit. The veterans in the brigade were all as fast as Leopard. She could occasionally beat them. The class leader was shocked. "You're still not the fastest? Captain Yi, which unit did you come from in the army?" "That's amazing." She wanted to ask, but she didn't. Even if she asked, Yi Qian probably wouldn't answer. "No, I can only occasionally outrun them." Yi Qian would always answer questions that didn't involve secrets. Compared to them, I'm still a bit lacking. Yi Qian wasn't being modest. He really thought so. Her comrades in the Snowfield Brigade knew how to fly several types of planes, but she had only been on a few types of planes, and she didn't know how to fly them. They also knew how to drive tanks, armored vehicles, and were familiar with all kinds of high-end weapons. Any problem could be solved in a matter of minutes. Yi Qian had always felt that he was not as good as his comrades in the Snowfield Brigade. She thought that she would be able to close the distance between them if she joined the airborne forces and became a special airborne soldier. "Do you guys have a lot of basic training? Was that why everyone was so powerful?" "The basic training for paratroopers and infantry soldiers should be about the same, right?" asked the class leader as she pursed her lips and stared at Yi Qian as if she wanted to ask something. Yi Qian glanced at the class leader and understood what she meant. He smiled and nodded. "Yeah, we're pretty much the same in terms of basic training. We know how to kick sandbags and run." Hearing this, the class leader let out a sigh of relief. Even she didn't know why she felt so relaxed when she heard this. Then she could understand why Yi Qian's foundation was so good. They all had the same training, so as long as the individual wasn't bad, the foundation wouldn't be too bad. The class leader, who was slightly relaxed, thought for a bit. There were some words that slipped out of her mouth, but she slowly swallowed them back down. If she said something now, would Captain Yi think she was deliberately looking for trouble? Chapter 51-74. Yi Qian looked at the hesitant squad leader and smiled politely. "Squad leader, even though I'm a captain in the army, not the Air Force. You're still my squad leader, so if you have something to say, just say it." The squad leader was a bit embarrassed. "It's nothing, I just wanted to remind you that even though the basic training between the two armies is similar, we paratroopers insist on multitasking. There's a big difference between technical training and infantry training. You've been training for half a year, so I won't say more. Your basic training is good, but your technical training still needs to be improved." This was a tactful reminder to Yi Qian that she transferred from the army to the paratroopers. Her basic training was good, but she still needed to improve her technical training. Yi Qian smiled and nodded. "Thank you for the reminder, I understand." She thanked her politely, but the squad leader felt even more uncomfortable. The squad leader nodded vaguely and didn't dare to look at Yi Qian anymore. The real Yi Qian had a sharpness that made her tense up. Even if she smiled at her, she couldn't relax. Fortunately, the 13 female soldiers arrived one after another. They glanced at Yi Qian with different thoughts. "He's really fast," he beat the squad leader. They gathered in formation and began the next round of training. Lu Hui and the other 5 had already teamed up. Guochui originally wanted to partner with Yi Qian, but in the end, she found Fang Xing Li Xiushui teamed up with Tang Liyin. The rest of the female soldiers also formed their own teams. The squad leader and assistant squad leader formed a team as usual. The squad leader looked at Yi Qian, who was still alone, and slightly tightened her lips. She glanced coldly at the female soldiers who had formed their teams in advance. These guys were still the same as before. They didn't change because of Yi Qian. "Yi Qian, you'll start last. I'll partner with you," the squad leader told Yi Qian. Usually, she or the assistant squad leader would be in charge of training, and today was the same. Today was different. Usually, Yi Qian would weakly answer, "Yes," but now Yi Qian stood tall and said confidently, "Squad leader, I want to try alone." The sound of breathing in the training ground suddenly became silent. Even the air seemed to have solidified. There was no movement for a long time. 14 gazes were focused on Yi Qian. All the female soldiers were looking at Yi Qian, their eyes dark and unclear. She wants to do it alone? Is she for real? She's not trying to be brave, right? 2 targets on both sides of the chest. You need 2 people. If you don't meet the target, you'll have to run. 5 kilometers. Lu Hui glanced at him and lowered her eyes slightly. In the past, when Yi Jian and the class monitor were partners, they even made the class monitor run 5 kilometers as punishment. In that case, what was the difference between 1 person and 2 people? Squad leader, I've. Yi Qian smiled and made fun of himself. In the past, I would have to run 5 kilometers with the squad leader. If I really can't meet the target, there's no difference. The female soldiers couldn't help but chuckle at his self-deprecating joke. Lu Hui glanced at Yi Qian in surprise. This person has changed. He actually knows his own limit. Just as she thought this, she replied in this way. The squad leader also wanted to laugh, but she held it in. She stared straight at Yi Qian for a long time. After confirming that Yi Qian had no intention of changing, she nodded in agreement. After the squad leader agreed, the female soldiers quickly exchanged glances in private. Chapter 51-75. She was so confident. She didn't seem like she was trying to be brave. Could it be that she could really complete the shooting that required 2 people to complete? Looking at the chest targets on both sides of the curve, the female soldiers felt that it was impossible. There were a total of 40 chest targets, and they had to complete the shooting in 2 parts. Could she do it? The female soldiers expressed their doubts. In the past, Yi Jian had missed 5 out of 10 chest targets, and 5 of them had either hit the 5th ring or the 6th ring. She had never even hit the 7th ring. Could she succeed? With a big question mark in their minds, the female soldiers started the next round of training. They didn't raise their doubts in front of Yi Qian. They didn't have a clear understanding of him, so it was best not to say anything. It wasn't like before. If the previous Yi Qian had said something like that, he would have been ridiculed. This round of training was very difficult, and the distance was quite far. 1 round of training was a kilometer, and from the finish line to the assembly point was another kilometer. It was equivalent to a round trip of 2 kilometers. The whole process required speed, and it was very taxing on one's physical strength. The previous Yi Qian, well, let's not talk about him. In any case, he was the most criticized here. The squad leader and vice squad leader started with the first group. The two of them passed through the bent steel wire net as fast as they could, leaped 10 times consecutively, and jumped into the 2-meter deep pit. After climbing out, they immediately crawled through the low-level wire net, got up, ran, and shot at the chest targets on both sides. After shooting, they immediately climbed onto the 5-meter high platform, flipped over the platform, and landed successfully. They shot at the chest targets on both sides again, pulled across, and returned to the assembly point with their parachute. When the two of them ran back, their hair was already wet with sweat. Large beads of sweat flowed down their cheeks, drop by drop. Their faces were red and dripping with sweat. Yi Qian looked at the time. Not bad. As expected of the elite soldiers. Their movements were smooth, and they cooperated well. There was no delay in the whole process, and they used 12 minutes and 16 seconds. The second group of female soldiers started. 2 figures ran quickly and started their warm-up. That's right. The first round was both a warm-up and a competition. All 15 people had to pass one round before they could continue training together. They wouldn't wait for the first group of female soldiers to run back like now. Instead, the first group of female soldiers would pass through the low-level wire net, and the next group of female soldiers would start immediately. Each group would complete 10 rounds before the training ended. After training here, the female soldiers only had 15 minutes of rest. Following that, it was the airborne soldiers' technical training, such as anti-dizziness training. The class leader panted heavily as she counted down the time, while the assistant class leader wrote down the time for each group. In the end, the ranking was decided, and whoever was at the bottom had to run half a meter less than the last 5 kilometers. Yi Qian had run quite a lot. For the past 6 months, he had been fined 5 kilometers almost every day. Lu Hui, who was exercising her wrists, whispered to her partner, "We have to get a good result. We can't lose face in front of the army." Of course. In the past we were ranked in the top 2 or 3. This time, let's see if we can be ranked first. The equally competitive female soldier was full of ambition and grandeur. She really wanted to win against the squad leader and vice squad leader. He had been number 2 for too long, and he was tired of it. Everyone wanted to win, so there was no disagreement. Since they had the same goal, things would be easier. Exchanging glances, they began to prepare for the fight. The two of them ran back and looked at the time. They were instantly overjoyed. 12 minutes and 3 seconds. They were currently in first place. They had really surpassed the class monitor and vice class monitor. Not bad. You have improved by 24%. Keep it up. The class monitor was also very happy. As the class monitor, she was naturally happy for the soldiers' improvement. Lu Hui smiled and shook her head. I will definitely keep it up. My goal is the time of Captain Lei and the others last time. Chapter 5176. Lu Hui's smile wasn't a provocation, it was more like a challenge to Yi Qian. This was the most common thing in the army. Whoever didn't want to admit defeat would be challenged to see how capable they were. If they lost, they would admit defeat and not cause any more trouble. Lu Hui was probably like this at this moment. Was she that good? Ah. She had already thrown the class leader and vice class leader to second place. Could Yi Qian, who had completed all the subjects by himself, succeed? It was fine if it was a single subject, but could Yi Qian complete the shooting that required 2 people to work together? It would be strange if he could complete it. The class leader saw Lu Hui's smile. When the next group of female soldiers started, she walked to Yi Qian's side and asked again, "Do you really plan to complete it by yourself? Don't you want to consider me? Maybe vice class leader?" In the past, Yi Qian was used to losing to the point that all the female soldiers were used to it. However, the current Yi Qian was different from the past. In any case, he was a company captain. If he lost too quickly, the soldiers would really look down on him. They already looked down on him. If he lost again, they would really look down on him from the bottom of their hearts. They wouldn't put her, a company captain, in their eyes. The class leader kindly reminded him. Yi Qian maintained a slight smile and shook his head. No, I want to try by myself. It doesn't matter if I succeed or not, I just want to try. It doesn't matter if I succeed or not, I just want to try. The class leader didn't think she could do this kind of embarrassing test. She wasn't as mentally strong as Yi Qian. The class leader let out a long sigh and nodded. Okay, then you try. If you really lose, then so be it. Anyway, everyone knows. It doesn't matter if it happens once or twice. Just bear with it. The class leader raised her eyes and looked at Lu Hui standing in front of her. She lowered her voice and said helplessly, Lu Hui's personality is like this. She doesn't have any ulterior motives. She's not a bad person, but she's bad because she's born with a sharp tongue. She was worried that Yi Qian would cause trouble for Lu Hui in the future. If a company captain wanted to make things difficult for a small soldier, she could just beckon with her finger. What's more, Yi Qian came in with a concealed identity. They didn't know, but Captain Lei definitely knew. If anything happened, Captain Lei would definitely stand by Yi Qian's side. The class leader liked Lu Hui a lot, so she had to protect her. Yi Qian, who knew the class leader's painstaking efforts, reassured her. She never wanted to make things difficult for Lu Hui, neither publicly nor privately. They would not make things difficult for anyone individually. They would only make things difficult for everyone. Yes, they would use their strength to make things difficult for everyone. It was an order from Division Commander Kong. A soldier's duty was to obey orders. She had no other choice but to obey. She was now the whetstone in Division Commander Kong's hands. She was also a sharp knife. Not only could she grind down the female soldiers' arrogance, but she could also stab them at certain times to teach them a lesson. Class rep, don't worry, I'm not that petty. I know that Lu Hui is not a bad person, but I also know that she has a sharp tongue. I know he's hot-blooded. He's a good seedling. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been selected into the Special Reconnaissance Company of the Airborne Forces. The reassurance was enough to fill the class leader's empty heart. She smiled and said, We can usually see that you're quite tolerant, otherwise. Otherwise, the class leader would awkwardly shut her mouth. Let's not talk about the past anymore. It's all in the past. If we talk about it again, wouldn't we be asking for trouble? Let's not talk about it anymore. As long as Yi Qian is still in the airborne forces, we can't talk about the past anymore. Chapter 5177. Yi Qian knew what the class leader wanted to say after, or else. She raised her eyebrows slightly and smiled without saying anything. Actually, she wasn't a petty person. She would remember whoever offended her, and if she didn't take revenge, she would take revenge later on. Of course, it was only for personal reasons. As for Lu Hui, she had indeed dissed her a lot in the past. Sometimes, she really wanted to ask if all the girls from the international metropolises were born with clever and sharp tongues. She had a sharp tongue and a good heart. Every time she said that, she only said it to her face in the training room. Other times, Lu Hui never said anything about her. Based on this point alone, she had never thought of deliberately making things difficult for Lu Hui after coming back. The other female soldiers were the same. Ostracizing and reprimanding were normal in the military. With Yi Qian's reassurance pill, the class leader's mood was bright and sunny. However, it quickly turned gloomy. There were two groups of female soldiers with poor result. After the class leader looked at the timer, her face darkened to the point that all the female soldiers kept quiet out of fear. Below 12 minutes and 30 seconds was good. Between 12 minutes and 30 seconds was good. Above 13 minutes and 30 seconds was not good. Two groups of female soldiers ran below 13 minutes and 50 seconds. It would be strange if the class leader's face didn't darken. The 6 of you train here for 2 hours tonight. You can rest when you pass. The class leader's cold voice came with a dark face. It was colder than the wind blowing from the mountains. The 6 female soldiers answered yes in unison. Their faces were tense and they felt ashamed of their result. The first 7 groups of 14 female soldiers all ran. 3 groups had excellent results, 2 groups had good results, and 2 groups had bad results. Only Yi Qian didn't run. The vice class leader also asked Yi Qian if she really wanted to run by herself. Yi Qian told the vice class leader with certainty that she really wanted to try by herself. She insisted again and again. What else could the vice class leader say? Yi Qian, here. The vice class leader gave the command. Yi Qian ran forward and stood still without a trace of timidity as she waited for the order to start. She was too calm. The confidence that overflowed from her as she ran covered her whole body like the sun. Wherever she went, there was light. The female soldiers' eyes were all on her. In the dark, her hands slowly clenched into fists. This Yi Qian was as dazzling as the morning sun. It had only been less than 2 hours, but the impression of her in his heart had faded. In a daze, he felt that she used to be just as radiant and calm as she was now. Is he really going to do it alone? Will that work? I don't know if she'll succeed. Looking at her, I think she'll succeed. Don't you guys think that Yi Qian is quite impressive? I feel like she's really done it now. You haven't even started. How do you know how powerful she is? Do you think her military rank is impressive? Are you trying to argue? Please focus on the word feeling. Thank you. Shoo, don't say anything. It's starting. The countdown begins. After the order was given, the vice squad leader pressed the stopwatch and started calculating. Yi Qian, armed with a gun on his back, rushed out with vigorous steps. His speed was too fierce and too fast. He was like a cheetah that had discovered its prey. Before he even started, his explosive power shocked everyone. The entire field was silent. Hiss! Someone sucked in a breath of cold air. Like a stake, it instantly smashed into the hearts of the female soldiers, causing their chests to tremble and go numb. So fast! Another female soldier muttered softly and unconsciously. Chapter 51-78. So fast, really fast. In the blink of an eye, she rushed out in front of their eyes, and in the blink of an eye, she had already rushed into the steel wire mesh 30 meters away. In the blink of an eye, a figure wearing a sky-blue camouflage training uniform rushed through one steel wire mesh after another with extremely precise movements. Too fast, too fast. She wasn't worried at all about whether or not she would be hooked by the steel wire. It was too fast, so fast that they were worried that the next second, the figure rushing forward would have problems with the steel wire mesh hooking her clothes, scratching her face, and stabbing her hands. But it didn't happen. She completed all of the steel wire mesh easily as if she was covering the ground. There were no obstacles at all. The class leader looked at the stopwatch and her eyes were filled with shock. 17 seconds. Only 17 seconds. The assistant class leader, who recorded the time for each subject, thought she heard wrong and suddenly looked up at the class leader. 17 seconds? Yes, 17 seconds. The class leader nodded. She didn't see wrong, it really was 17 seconds. When the female soldier closest to her heard this, she covered her mouth with her hand and swallowed the scream that rushed to her throat. 10, 17 seconds. She. Yi Qian only took 17 seconds, twice as fast as the class leader, and twice as fast as the other female soldiers. She covered her mouth and turned her head to speak to her comrade next to her, only to find that her comrade next to her was doing the same thing as her. They all covered their mouths to prevent themselves from screaming out loud. Their eyes met and they could clearly see the shock in each other's eyes. She passed through the steel wire mesh in 17 seconds, twice as fast as them. The two of them heard the time reported by the assistant class leader. The other female soldiers didn't hear it, but they saw it. They saw how fast Yi Qian was and how standard her posture was when she passed through the steel wire mesh. If they didn't know that the figure passing through was Yi Qian, they really would have thought that it was a soldier under Captain Lei's command. Only a soldier under Captain Lei's command could be so powerful. But that was Yi Qian. Yi Qian, who used to take more than 40 seconds to pass through the steel wire mesh. Lu Hui, whose eyes were wide open, pressed her hand to her chest and took deep breaths. Steady, steady, I can't panic first. If I panic, I'll lose without a doubt. I have to be steady. Deep breaths, deep breaths. Don't panic, don't panic, don't panic, the results aren't out yet. She might not necessarily win, and he might not necessarily lose either. He had to wait for the final result to know. Lu Hui, who kept taking deep breaths, calmed herself down while the other female soldiers continued to be shocked. On the other hand, Guo Chui's expression was the most stable. Yi Qian. She had always felt that Yi Qian was strange, but now she didn't feel strange at all. She was supposed to be like this. Guo Chui, who had quickly accepted Yi Qian, became the calmest of all the female soldiers. Yi Qian had already completed 4 out of the 10 saddle horses. Her right hand supported the saddle while her left hand held the rifle horizontally. She was so fast that from one saddle horse to the next, her feet did not seem to touch the ground. It gave people the illusion that she was floating all the way. After the 10 saddle horses were completed, the class leader reported the time. The assistant class leader, who was taking notes, found that her hands were trembling. Again, twice as fast as her and the class leader. After recording the time, the assistant class leader looked up and found that Yi Qian's figure was no longer on the field. Yi Qian had already jumped into the 2-meter deep pit. Once he jumped into the pit, he steadied himself, grabbed the climbing rope with both hands and pulled with force. His feet stepped on the rope with a whoosh 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 sound, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared out of the 2-meter deep pit. Chapter 51-79. At this moment, the sound of people sucking in cold air rose and fell. Lu Hui felt her heart beating so fast and heavy that it was difficult to breathe. She was probably out of breath. She thought she would be number 1 if she defeated the class leader today, but now it seemed like everything was unknown. Even if Yi Qian didn't have a partner, she knew she had lost. She really lost. If she had a partner, she might have one instead. She knew she had lost after passing through the steel wire hoop. She also lost in the 10-pommel horse. She still lost in the 2-meter deep pit. There were still a few more subjects. She was only confident she could beat Yi Qian in shooting. There were 40 targets in 2 sections, and each of them was responsible for 20 targets. She hit all 20 targets, and 5 of them were in the 10th ring, while the rest were in the 8th ring. Shooting was her best skill in all her basic training, and she had confidence in it. At least he won one class and didn't let himself be completely defeated. Lu Hui secretly encouraged herself and comforted herself, but she didn't know she was destined to lose miserably. As a sniper, Yi Qian had never lost in shooting before. I finally know why she didn't choose a partner. Having a partner would be a burden instead. It would slow her down. The assistant class monitor said softly as he took notes with trembling hands. The class leader nodded. That's right, a partner would really slow her down. There are still 2 sections to shoot from both sides. Let's see how many targets she can hit. The class leader took a deep breath and exhaled. Her mind was in a mess, and her heart was in turmoil. She couldn't look at Yi Qian with a calm heart. The female soldiers who had once said that Yi Qian's personal ability was weak and her ability to accept things was weak, and that she shouldn't stay in the airborne team, now felt their faces burning. They even felt a faint pain. Why did they think Yi Qian was weak in the past? Why didn't they doubt him? Their eyes were blind, even their hearts were blind. Yi Qian, who was rapidly crawling through the low-wire steel wire, did not care about what the female soldiers were thinking. She was fully immersed in her training. She kicked her feet, held the gun in her left hand, and pushed her right hand forward. Very quickly, she crossed the steel wire. She took a breath, supported herself with one hand on the ground, leaned forward in a dashing and agile manner, and dashed forward again. The two of them were supposed to be responsible for shooting at the chess targets on both sides of the front. However, Yi Jian was the only one doing it now. How many rings would she get? The Yi Qian of the past, no, I can't bring up the Yi Qian of the past anymore. The Yi Qian of the past was all fake. It was all a disguise. Bang! Gunshots rang out. The bullets had clearly hit the chest target, but the female soldiers felt as if they had hit their own chest. Bang! Bang! After a series of shots, the targets fell to the ground. 3 bullets had knocked down 3 targets, 1 on the right and 2 on the left. Am I seeing things? Am I seeing things? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? She. Are the targets broken? Yi Qian. Mom, Yi Qian. She. All sorts of inconceivable and shocked discussions could no longer be hidden. The scene in front of them made it impossible for them to suppress the shock in their hearts, and they could no longer remain silent. She. She had completed the 2 targets by herself. She had completed them by herself. What was even more terrifying was that she had scored all 10 rings. That was because only those who hit the 10 rings would fall. 3 shots, all 3 targets had fallen. 10 rings. Shocked? So shocked that their eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. Chapter 5180. How could they not be shocked? All the female soldiers thought that it was impossible for Yi Qian to shoot 2 targets on both sides of the chest alone. Even if they had just seen how good she was, no one thought that she was equally good at shooting. No matter how good she was, how could she do the work of 2 people alone? Yet, she really did it. She really did it. Down again, down again. 10 points. Another 10 points. She's so fast. How can she move left and right and still keep shooting accurately? Again, 10 points again. The 9th target is down, and it's still 10 points. One after another, tongue-tied voices kept coming. They couldn't believe that what they saw was true. It was true. Guo Chui clenched her fists, Li Xiushui held Tang Lian's arm tightly, the class leader's eyes stared at the figure in front of them, the vice-class leader's breathing slowed down, and his eyes were straight. What about the other female soldiers? They kept their eyes wide open, and didn't even notice that Captain Lei came over with several male soldiers. Gunshots rang out, and Captain Lei said to the male soldiers, "There are a few good shooters in the female soldier class. If you have time, practice with them more. In the future, you will complete missions with them. Don't talk to me about being shy. They're not shy, so why are you guys shy?" Speaking of which, the male soldiers' ears turned red. They were shy, so they had to be given some time to adapt. As they were approaching the training ground, Xiao Tu made a sound of surprise and asked puzzledly, "Why is there only one person shooting? Where's the other one?" After he finished speaking, his face suddenly changed. Captain Lei ran with a straight face. The gunshots were dense, and it was clear that there were 2 people shooting. Now there was only one person. Where was the other female soldier? She was mistakenly shot by a blank round. Did something happen? Although it was not common for soldiers to be accidentally shot by their comrades during training, it did happen. That was why Captain Lei was worried. After running for a few meters, the gunshots were still dense, and there was indeed only one person shooting. Captain Lei's eyes suddenly lit up, and he ran faster. He spoke faster and signaled his soldiers to keep up. "Yi Qian is shooting, keep up." Xiao Tu reacted the fastest and ran. "Damn! Yi Qian is shooting. If you don't run faster, you'll miss out on the fun." Although the rest of the male soldiers did not know why Yi Qian was so excited in front of the shooting squad leader and the squad leader, when they saw this, they quickly followed. When he saw Yi Qian being shot, he immediately regretted not running faster. Bang 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 bang. The sound of gunfire continued. Lu Hui, who was quite confident in her shooting, was so excited that she seemed to have forgotten to breathe. Her cheeks were flushed red. It was a red face due to shame. She widened her eyes and continued to look at the figures shooting continuously in front of her. Seeing the targets on both sides fall down, Lu Hui gasped for breath. She had mixed feelings in her heart. In Yi Qian's eyes, she must be a clown. All the female soldiers were probably clowns in her heart. Lu Hui, who was blushing, thought silently. She glanced slightly to the side, and was not surprised to find that her comrades were also blushing and ashamed. They had all once ostracized Yi Qian. They had once told her in front of Yi Qian that with her ability, she was not suitable to stay in the airborne division. It was better for her to go back to where she came from to avoid losing her life. Now, when they thought of the past, they really had no face to see anyone. Chapter 51-81. Lu Hui took a deep breath. Just a moment ago, she actually dared to challenge Yi Qian. Even if it was just her gaze. She really wanted to slap herself. Where did she get the courage? Where did she get the face to challenge Yi Qian? Luckily, she didn't tell her comrades that she had the confidence to beat Yi Qian. She also didn't say that she could beat Yi Qian in shooting. Luckily, she held it in and avoided the embarrassment that would make her want to find a hole to hide in. Extremely fortunate, truly extremely fortunate. The continuous gunshots were very dense. One person was responsible for shooting 2 targets at the chest. The number of times she pulled the trigger increased, so the gunshots were naturally more frequent. The female soldiers looked at the chest targets falling one after another. The continuous shock made them feel a little breathless. Down, 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 another chest target, another 10 points. Accurate shooting, extremely fast. One person was able to shoot 2 targets at the same time, and her shooting speed was twice as fast as theirs. What did it mean to shoot twice as fast as theirs? Even now, Yi Qian was able to do something that required 2 people to work together. Moreover, she was even more outstanding. 10 points, down 17 targets, 10 points on each target. How did she do it? How did she do it? Inconceivable, unconscious murmurs were heard. The voice wasn't soft, and it came from the middle of the group. All the female soldiers, including the squad leader, heard it. It was Guo Chui's voice. In the past, she was the only one who felt that Yi Qian was a little strange and suspected that she had other motive. Her feeling was right. Yi Qian was so stupid that all her comrades thought she was incurable. There was something wrong with her in the first place. If she was really that stupid, why would she stay in the military? She would have returned to the military when she was still a recruit. Yi Qian wasn't stupid. She just had other motives. The 18th chest target fell, 19 chest targets fell, 20 chest targets fell. 20 chest targets fell. Yi Qian had completed the first segment of shooting, all 10 points. The female soldiers were so shocked that their eyes were fixed. It was as if their souls had been sucked out. Their minds were blank, and they didn't have any self-confidence. How did she do it? How did Yi Qian do it? Her only thought was, how did Yi Qian do it? Applause sounded from their side, followed by a few deep and energetic male voices. Good. Good. Wonderful. Amazing, Yi Qian. Old Nyo. Strength, this is the strength to crush everyone. Yi Qian is even better than you. You didn't achieve such amazing results on your own before. Yi Qian had already put away her gun and started running. There was a 5-meter-tall platform in front of her. She needed to climb up the rope, climb over the platform, and land on the ground. Then, she would fire again from both sides. Captain Lei walked in front of the squad leader and directly took the record sheet from the squad leader, who was still in shock. He didn't look at the results of the other female soldiers, but fixed his gaze on Yi Qian's current results. The class leader, who subconsciously wanted to retrieve the record sheet, came back to her senses. When she saw who took the record sheet, she immediately restrained her expression. Captain. Yes, let me see. Captain Lei, who had locked onto Yi Qian's results, didn't even raise his head. He just nodded slightly in response. Captain Lei's gaze swept over Yi Qian's result. He couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. She was even better than the male soldiers in all the individual subjects. It seems like the unit Yi Qian is going to isn't simple. It's probably the same as the Air Force's Shadow Brigade. They're all so strong that I doubt they're human. Chapter 5182. After looking at the results, Captain Lei looked up at Yi Qian, who was nimbly climbing up the high platform, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Next was shooting from both sides, which was slightly more difficult than shooting from both sides. The two sides of the front section were lined up in order, and the shooting distance was the same. The chest targets in this section were uneven in height, and there was a distinction between the front and back. The distance was also far and near, so the difficulty was greater than the previous section. He knew that Yi Qian was very good at shooting. But to what extent? He didn't know. Moving quickly to shoot was also a test of one's shooting skills. Would Yi Qian be able to hit all 10 points like he did just now? He was looking forward to the next drill. After climbing up the platform, Yi Qian strapped her rifle to her back and tightened her grip on the rope that would allow her to land smoothly from the 5-meter-tall platform. She was originally facing away from the female soldiers, but now she turned around and faced them. She tightened the rope, kicked off the ground, and with a whoosh, she disappeared from everyone's sight. A few seconds later, her slender figure reappeared. They're coming, they're coming. Stop shaking my arm, I know she's here. Staring straight ahead, Tang Lian struggled to free her arm from Li Xiushui's grasp. Li Xiushui shook her arm so hard that she couldn't take a closer look. Guochui couldn't help but tiptoe, and her body leaned forward slightly. Suddenly, she looked to the side and saw that Lu Hui, who was behind her a moment ago, was now standing beside her. Lu Hui, she's stronger than all of us. Guochui, who was afraid of missing the best part, quickly retracted her gaze. She looked straight ahead and said in a low voice, "We've all lost." I know, but we still have a chance of winning. These are all basic training, and the infantry also have it. Lu Hui didn't want to boost the morale of others and diminish her own prestige. She admitted that Yi Qian was indeed very capable, but she herself was not bad either. More importantly, Lu Hui, who couldn't even bear to blink, smiled slightly. Don't forget that there's still technical training. We're all veterans, and she's just a new recruit. Therefore, we still have a chance of winning. Having said that, Lu Hui added, although we still have a chance of winning, she's so good. I'm afraid that she'll learn everything very quickly. Who knows when she'll surpass us? Lu Hui, who didn't want to boost the morale of others and diminish her own prestige, was quite self-aware. The most important thing for a person was to know himself. If he didn't even know himself, then he wouldn't be far from dying of stupidity. Lu Hui calmed herself down and looked at the sprinting figure in front of her with a serious face. She then heard the continuous gunshot. Pung pung pung. The gunshots directly hit everyone's heart, causing everyone's heart to twitch. Sometimes it was panic, sometimes it was chaos, sometimes it was fear, and sometimes it was worry. Yi Qian, who could shoot twice as fast as a normal person, was still fully focused on her training. Even though she was very confident in her shooting skills, she did not become arrogant or careless because of it. One by one, the targets fell to the ground. Yi Qian's eyes were sharp, but his heart was calm. This was just a normal training session. The only difference was that she was establishing her authority again. That's right, she was establishing her authority again. Since it was a grindstone knife, it naturally had to be extremely sharp. Otherwise, how could it be called a knife? Moreover, what was the point of keeping a knife that wasn't sharp? All 20 chest targets were hit and all of them fell. It made the shooting range seem a little lonely. The gunshots stopped, and everyone's breathing slowly returned to normal. It was too exciting, too shocking. It was the first time in their lives that they had seen a gun that was twice as fast as a normal person's. Chapter 5183. Yi Qian, who had completed her training, put her rifle on her back, slightly adjusted her breathing, and ran all the way around the shooting range. Before she came back, the applause had already sounded. Captain Lei applauded and said loudly, "Good! Good! Good!" The three words, "good," already contained Captain Lei's appreciation of Yi Qian. The rest of the male soldiers looked at the running figure with shining eyes. A Special Forces scout couldn't help but secretly give an idea. "Boss, why are you still letting her go? You must not let her go. So powerful, let her go back to the army? How stupid would that be? Must not let her go? You have the final say?" Captain Lei, who was still clapping hard, glanced at the guy who stabbed him in the heart. "Why don't you try?" The male soldier touched his nose and scratched the back of his head. After a while, he whispered, "Why don't I give it a try? What if it works?" "Yes." Captain Lei nodded. "Then go and try, but not alone. There had to be a few more people to try together, and they had to take turns." Then, he immediately looked at the few male soldiers around him who were looking at Yi Qian with eyes as bright as light bulbs. Just now, Lu Bin said that he was going to talk to Yi Qian and let her stay in our team. As the saying goes, unity is strength. When the time comes, you can take turns to try. Maybe it will work. Okay. No problem. I've wanted to do this for a long time. Boss, leave it to us. Several male soldiers who were clapping so hard that their palms were burning were still afraid that Captain Lei would go back on his word and not let them go, so they immediately nodded and took on the task. Captain Lei was just trying to make a Hail Mary effort. He and Division Commander Kong had talked about it many times, but it didn't work every time. Would these brats succeed? Impossible. But still, let's give it a try. What if it works? The male soldiers were secretly saying that they would take turns to leave Yi Qian, and they were in high spirits. The female soldiers were even more excited than the male soldiers. The male soldiers had already witnessed Yi Qian's prowess during the week-long exercise. Today, they were able to see Yi Qian's marksmanship. Therefore, they were able to maintain their composure. The female soldiers were different. Before today, Yi Qian was nothing in their eyes. He had a lot of problems and was not qualified to stay in the airborne troop. At this moment, they no longer believed that Yi Qian was weak and incompetent. If she was weak and incompetent, they would have no face to live in this world, and would have killed themselves long ago. If in the past, Yi Qian was as insignificant as a speck of dust in their hearts, then now, Yi Qian was like a towering mountain that they had to look up to. Amazing. She completed the training of 2 people by herself. I probably won't see another female soldier as amazing as Yi Qian in my life. I feel that Yi Qian's level is on the same level as Captain Lei and the others. We can't compare at all. In the past, she was really... Guo Zuazian was right. There was really something wrong with Yi Qian in the past. It's too late to say anything now. I have a very strong sense of foreboding. Sisters, I'm afraid our good days are coming to an end. These words did not come from the mouths of other female soldiers, but from Lu Hui. She was serious and cold, and it made the hearts of all the female soldiers, including the squad leader and deputy squad leader, tremble. Were their good days coming to an end? The squad leader looked at Yi Qian's results and exchanged glances with the deputy squad leader, who also looked up after looking at the results. Then, they thought about Yi Qian's daily routine of leaving early and returning late. Both of them pursed their lips tightly. Their good days were coming to an end. Chapter 5184. There was a certain difference between Lu Hui's good days come to an end and the class leader and vice-class leaders' good days come to an end, but the essence was similar. All in all, with Yi Qian's performance today, all the female soldiers felt unprecedented pressure. The female soldiers they used to look down on had such a big reversal. The female soldiers they used to think were incompetent were actually much stronger than them. Looking at the figure getting closer and closer, the female soldiers only felt their faces burning and painful. They didn't even know where to look, and they didn't dare to look at Yi Qian, who was already close at hand. The class leader, who had been adjusting her emotions until Yi Qian approached, was still feeling the fluctuations in her heart. She originally wanted to hide her gaffe, but when she saw Yi Qian's clear black eyes that reflected the blue sky, the class leader suddenly felt that all of her concealment was transparent to Yi Qian. No matter how she tried to hide it, Yi Qian could still see through her. The class leader, who took a deep breath in front of Yi Qian, announced Yi Qian's result. A quasi-precision value was reported, and thunderous applause came from behind her. Yi Qian bent down and flew through the steel wire net, leaping 10 times in a row, jumping into the 2-meter deep pit. After climbing out, she immediately crawled through the low-level steel wire net, got up, ran, and shot at the chess targets on both sides. After shooting, she immediately climbed onto the 5-meter high platform, flipped over the platform, and landed successfully. She shot at the chess targets on both sides again, pulled across, and then returned to the assembly point with the umbrella on her back. Yi Jian used 9 minutes and 47 seconds. Previously, Lu Hui's team, who was ranked first, had a time of 12 minutes and 3 seconds. Yi Qian was faster than them by 2 minutes and 56 seconds. The time he used was the same as Captain Lei's team, which was under 10 minutes. And Captain Lei's requirement for the female soldiers was to finish within 12 minutes. The reason why Lu Hui, who ran 12 minutes and 3 seconds, dared to challenge Yi Qian with her gaze was because she was close to being excellent. She had the confidence to challenge him. And now, Lu Hui had already given herself 2 small slaps. After giving the 2 slaps, Lu Hui and her comrades applauded Yi Qian for his return. In a place where strength spoke louder than words, the applause should be given to Yi Qian. The class leader, who didn't hide her loss of composure, was able to face Yi Qian more easily. She said sincerely, "Yi Qian, you're really amazing. You've already surpassed Captain Lei and the others. It gives us pressure, motivation, and hope. If the male soldiers can do it, we female soldiers can do it too. 12 points is the result that Captain Lei set for us. 10 points is our goal." Turning around, the spirited squad leader faced the female soldiers who were standing upright like steel spears. "Female soldiers, our goal is to finish within 10 points. Can you reach it?" "Yes, yes, yes." The high-spirited voice answered the class leader. They could achieve the goals that the male soldiers could achieve, so could the female soldiers. There was a ready-made one in front of them. They were all female soldiers. If Yi Jian could do it, so could they. Very good. From today onwards, all training will be increased. Do you agree? The class leader took the opportunity to ask again. Now that the morale was high, they had to take advantage of the opportunity. Agree. The neat and crisp voices were imposing. Only 13 people answered, but they didn't lose to thousands of soldiers and horses. Female soldiers wouldn't admit defeat easily. Seeing this, Captain Lei had a knowing smile in his eyes. All of this was because of Yi Qian. Today, the embryonic form of what Division Commander Kong hoped for had taken shape. Chapter 5185. As expected, humans needed a little stimulation to grow. Just like him and his brothers, they were shocked by Yi Qian's terrifying endurance and quickly increased their training volume. So far, everyone was very used to it and was more fulfilled. It could be said that Yi Qian played a major role in this exercise, so quickly and directly attacking the enemy command center. Walking to the front of the high-spirited female soldiers, Captain Lei's gaze slowly swept across the faces of the female soldiers. "I won't say much nonsense, but I still have to say what needs to be said. Yi Qian from the army joined our airborne force. You didn't guess wrong when you thought she came in through connections. She did join our airborne force through connections. Speaking of this, Captain Lei deliberately paused. His sharp gaze swept over a few female soldiers who usually liked to target Yi Qian. Finally, his gaze stopped on Lu Hui and he waved to her. Third one in the second row, you come up. Third one in the second row. Lu Hui took a deep breath and ran out. She stood still and saluted. Captain Lei asked her, I know you used to look down on Yi Qian and always thought she came in through connections. Now I'm telling you, Yi Qian did come in through connections. Tell me, is she worthy of staying in the airborne force? Facing Captain Lei's questioning, Lu Hui would be lying if she said she wasn't flustered. But no matter how flustered she was, she still had to answer the question truthfully. Captain, I didn't know Yi Qian's strength in the past, so I always thought she was unworthy. Because the special scouts of our airborne special forces are the tip of the knife of our military's combat strength. They are the vanguard in military training competitions and on the training field. With Yi Qian's performance at that time, she was indeed unworthy. She was an honest person. It was no wonder that no matter how much she targeted Yi Qian had no opinion on her. The only thing he said was, Lu Hui needs to be frustrated. She was consistent on the outside and indeed made people think highly of her. The sharpness in Captain Lei's eyes did not diminish. He pulled the corners of his mouth and said coldly, as a scout, you lack even the most basic sensitivity. I think you're just SOSO. Lu Hui did not accept this criticism. Hearing this, Lu Hui replied with a serious expression, Captain, I can only accept half of your criticism. Lu Hui, the class leader shouted. She was too bold, she even dared to pick on Captain Lei's criticism. Captain Lei raised his hand. Monitor, let her speak. I'd like to hear the reason. My reason is very simple. First of all, Yi Qian deliberately hid her strength and showed her weakness on purpose. She misled us from the beginning. Captain Lei, you saw it just now. Yi Qian's individual strength is far stronger than ours. If she wanted to hide, she could have done it without us noticing. Secondly, we also suspected that there was something wrong with Yi Qian, but you stepped forward to cover for him and dispel our suspicions about Yi Qian. You and Yi Qian have joined forces. In addition, you also intentionally covered for Yi Qian. You didn't want us to know how strong Yi Qian is, so how could we discover that there's something wrong with Yi Qian? Therefore, Captain, we are not sharp enough, but we will never accept the criticism that we are only SOSO. Her voice was powerful, fearless, and her courage was commendable. But in Captain Lei's eyes, her reasons were all to cover up her own lack of strength and to find excuses for her own lack of strength. His cold gaze swept over Lu Hui, and Captain Lei looked at all the female soldiers. What about you? Is the reason the same? Answer me immediately. Chapter 5186. She demanded an immediate answer and did not give the female soldiers a chance to think. The female soldiers did not dare to delay and answered loudly. Yes. No. The answers were not uniform. Some people agreed with Lu Hui. Her explanation was their explanation, while others did not. Answer no, come out. Captain Lei said loudly. His deep voice was like the muffled thunder over the snow mountain in winter, making people shudder. The male soldiers restrained their expressions and stood aside like the black-faced thunder god. Their eyes were sharp and cold. This group of female soldiers had some ability. Well, the ability to successfully anger the captain. The muffled thunder exploded and the snow mountain collapsed. They were going to be unlucky. Yi Qian had known Captain Lei for half a year. Although Captain Lei was serious to the male soldiers and was cruel and merciless to all the soldiers during training, he had never had such a cold expression like today. Captain Lei was angry. Yi Qian, come here, a male soldier said in a low voice. He was worried that Yi Qian would stand up for the female soldiers. Yi Qian, who pursed her lips, shook her head. She could not leave the female soldiers behind, but she would not stand up to plead for mercy. After half a year of observation, although the female soldiers had good comprehensive ability, there were also many small problems. For example, Lu Hui's explanation just now should not be explained at all. A mistake was a mistake. How could there be so many explanations? On the battlefield, the enemy was defeated by them several times. Therefore, they took it lightly. In the end, the enemy won and they suffered a crushing defeat. Don't tell me that you're going to stand up and say loudly, "I don't admit that we've lost. They've been defeated by us before, and they've never won even once. This time, they've won. They deliberately lost to us a few times to mislead us, and that's why I lost." The two were the same. You lost and were wrong. How could you blame the other party for hiding their strength? Lu Hui's explanation was not an explanation, but an escape. It was an escape that she did not even realize. What was even more surprising was that her explanation was agreed by most of the female soldiers. Instead of admitting his mistake immediately after losing, he chose to explain himself. If he wasn't wearing a military uniform outside the military camp, then his explanation would indeed be valid and let others know that he was wronged. However, this was not the outside world. This was the military camp, a place where there was only victory and defeat. There were no explanations, only summarizing one's own mistakes. Your explanations would only numb yourself and avoid mistake. In the end, you would make mistakes again and again until you were completely defeated. Therefore, Captain Lei was angry. Yi Qian, who had seen the cause of the situation clearly, would not stand up. Captain Lei needed the female soldiers to understand what they had done wrong, and she would face the problem together with the female soldiers, as well as the possible punishment that would follow. The female soldiers who answered no stepped forward. There were not many of them, only 4 of them. Among them were Guochui, Fang Xing, the class monitor, and the assistant class monitor. Of the 14 female soldiers, only 4 answered no, including the squad leader and the deputy squad leader. At this moment, Captain Lei admired Division Commander Kong's decision. A master's strategy was not for immediate benefits, but for long-term benefits, long-term development. Why did you answer no? Captain Lei looked at Fang Xing. Captain Lei was the first to call out Fang Xing because he had all the information on the female soldiers, including their attitude towards Yi Qian. Fang Xing was silent. She had never lined up with Yi Qian, but she had also never helped Yi Qian. She had always stood on the neutral side. She was a female soldier who had her own opinions and would not go with the flow. Chapter 5187. Captain Lei had a good impression of Fang Xing. Although she was neutral, she still had a sense of propriety. The petite and tenacious Fang Xing had a serious expression as she replied loudly, reporting, "No reason." No reason? The female soldiers who answered yes frowned slightly, as if they had caught something. Captain Lei looked at her for a few seconds, then looked at Guochui. "What about you?" Reporting, "No reason, no explanation, no reason." Guochui replied loudly, her eyes firm, not worried about her answer. They didn't see Yi Qian's hidden strength. It was their fault. As a scout, they didn't even have the judgment and sharpness they should have. What qualifications did they have to explain? They had no qualifications. 3 no's came out. Lu Hui's face changed immediately, followed by layers of cold sweat on her back. No reason, no explanation, no reason. Yes, she didn't see it was her own fault. Yi Qian didn't let them see it, that was Yi Qian's strength. What did it have to do with Yi Qian whether they saw it or not? Big mistake, she made a big mistake, and she kept making mistakes. Cold sweat came out layer by layer. Gritting her teeth, Lu Hui's expression suddenly turned cold. She raised her voice again. Reporting. "Speak. Captain, your criticism is correct. I was wrong. I'll accept all punishment from Captain. A mistake was a mistake. She had to stop the mistake, accept punishment, accept criticism, face failure, and admit that she was inferior to Yi Qian. As of now, she was inferior to Yi Qian. Captain Lei looked deeply at the female soldiers who were making the most noise, had the most opinions, and was the most obvious target. Then he looked at Yi Qian, who was still calm in the face of the applause. Captain Lei's dark eyes flashed with a smile. The powerful Yi Qian even had a good eye for people. He had thought that Lu Hui was narrow-minded for various reasons, but Yi Qian said that she dared to take responsibility for her actions. She was a good candidate to be a vanguard. Now it seemed that she was indeed a vanguard, but she still needed to be polished. Lu Hui's words woke up the female soldiers who vaguely knew that they had made a mistake. Their expressions were cold. If they were wrong, then they were wrong. If they didn't find out, then they found out. There was no explanation at all. Now tell me again. You think you didn't notice Yi Qian's disguise because Yi Qian's disguise was too perfect, so you didn't notice it, right? No! What is that? Captain Lei's momentum rose, and the muffled thunder finally fell on the snow mountain. The avalanche came with a bang, destroying people's minds. None of the female soldiers continued to explain for themselves in their hearts. Maintaining the vigor that a soldier should have, they answered loudly, "No reason." It was very neat, as if they had discussed the answer together. Only when they all agreed that they were wrong would there be such an orderly answer. Captain Lei, who was already angry, was not appeased. If they were male soldiers, he would have kicked them until they woke up. Why would he stand here and talk to them directly? Then I'll tell you now what relationship Yi Qian has. It was our division commander Kong who begged Yi Qian to come over. He begged the military headquarters, the commander-in-chief of the army, and spent a Herculean effort to get Yi Qian, who had no intention of transferring to our army, to come over. She came in because of this relationship. Which one of you has the ability to make Division Commander Kong come forward and beg for her? Which one of you has? Chapter 5188. What? Yi Qian was a paratrooper that Division Commander Kong asked for? It wasn't Yi Qian who wanted to come. He was asked to come by Division Commander. It was already shocking enough before, but now the threat was so great that it almost made them gasp. In an instant, all eyes fell on Yi Qian again. She stood in the bright and clear sunlight with an indifferent expression. She was neither arrogant nor impatient. She stood quietly, but she already had the lofty and unyielding character of a pine tree. She stood like an unclimbable snowy mountain. The people that Division Commander Kong asked for were picked by them. Every day they wanted to kick Yi Qian back to the army. If Yi Qian was really pushed away by them at that time, they couldn't bear the consequences. You think you're so great just because you caught a little weakness of others. Each and every one of you is no different from a clown. I'm ashamed of you. As the class leader, you don't set an example and turn a blind eye. You think that as long as you don't go too far, everything will be fine. You're the class leader, not a block of wood. Do you need me to teach you how to be united? Do you need me to tell you how to be a good class leader? The class leader stood still with a pale face. Even if she was scolded until she lost all face, she still stood upright. Scolding was scolding, but soldiers couldn't lose their backbone. As the vice class leader, you live in the same dormitory. You know that Yi Qian is being pushed aside everywhere, but you choose to turn a blind eye. Do you think you're doing well? Have you fulfilled your responsibilities as the vice class leader? The vice class leader held her breath and replied loudly, reporting, I didn't fulfill my responsibilities as the vice class leader. I accept any punishment. Wait. I won't let you down. Captain Lei snorted. The standing female soldiers tightened their calves and abdomen, looking straight ahead and even breathing in unison. Now, even if the angry Captain Lei raised his foot to kick them, they wouldn't be surprised at all. Captain Lei, who had always been iron-willed, really wanted to kick each of them. However, from time to time, he would mutter in his heart, "This is a female soldier, this is a female soldier." Only then did he resist the urge to raise his foot. Captain Lei did not continue to stand in one place. He lifted his foot and walked around the outer circle of the female soldiers. The faint rusty sound and the stereo ring hit the eardrums of the female soldiers. The male soldiers whispered to Yi Qian, "If it were us, we would have kicked him a long time ago. We wouldn't have scolded him so politely. Beating you up until you can't get out of bed for 3 days is already showing mercy." They think that Captain Lei is easy to talk to. In fact, it's all because they are all female soldiers. If they really annoy boss, I think the female soldiers will also beat them up. All of them are brainless. Beating them up twice will teach them a lesson, and they'll know what to do in the future. Don't be soft-hearted in the future. If you don't grind them, they won't become useful. They still have time to grind them. Yi Qian listened to them one by one, but did not express his opinion. Captain Lei, who was still in the stereo ring, came out from behind the female soldiers. Since he had opened his mouth today, he might as well scold them until they learned their lesson. You can think that Yi Qian is weak, but what right do you have to decide whether she stays or leaves? Today you can decide whether she stays or leaves. Tomorrow, can you even decide whether I, the captain, stay or leave? Arrogant, ignorant, selfish, indifferent. You think you have the ability, knowledge, unity, and friendliness. Look at you now. Why don't you know to ask yourself whether you have the right to stay in the airborne troops and in our reconnaissance company? You think you're so great, right? Why don't you think about how much you're worth in my eyes? Think about it carefully. Don't think that you can stay here forever after joining me. If I let you go, can you continue to stay? Looking down on Yi Qian? Where's your shame? Chapter 5189. After circling around twice, Captain Lei, who still felt that he was merciful to all the female soldiers, stood back in the same place. His murderous aura made the female soldiers, who were blushing with shame and indignation, feel as if the string in their hearts was about to break. Too scary. An angry Captain Lei is really too scary. If he said he wanted them to leave, he could definitely do it. It's 11:07 in the morning. I'll give you 5 minutes to pack your backpacks and run 30 kilometers. Return to the team before 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Yes. The squad leader took the lead and answered loudly. Hearing the neat and powerful answer, Captain Lei didn't have any expression. This was a punishment. He only scolded them, and that was already a mercy. He turned to Yi Qian and said in a voice that was as cold as ice, "Yi Qian, you can train alone or join the male soldiers for training." "Captain, I'm a member of the female soldier class. I accept all punishment." Yi Qian didn't accept. She chose to complete the 30-kilometer armed run with the female soldiers. Her choice made the female soldiers purse their lips and feel even more ashamed. Yi Qian had always regarded herself as a member of the female soldier class. What did they do? They were deeply ashamed of their previous behavior. Captain Lei didn't ask Yi Qian if she wanted to reconsider and agreed on the spot. "Okay." With only 5 minutes left, Captain Lei shouted, "Dismissed." All the female soldiers ran back to the dormitory to pack their backpacks and gather. Yi Qian's running speed had always been good. In the blink of an eye, she was ahead of the female soldiers by a large margin. Guo Chui caught up with Lu Wei, who was struggling to catch up, and reminded her in a low voice, "Don't forget your previous bet." If one day Yi Qian exceeded her, she would kneel down and kowtow to Yi Qian. Lu Wei didn't forget her bet. She gasped and said, "Don't worry, I'll remember. As long as she really surpasses me, I will definitely kneel down and kowtow to apologize." She would definitely not break her promise. "Okay." Guo Chui nodded lightly. "Let's apologize to her together." "No need. I'll take responsibility for my own actions. I made the bet myself." It has nothing to do with you. You even advised me at that time. I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Guo was relieved that there wasn't any resentment. She was afraid that Lu Hui would be stubborn and end up digging her own grave. There was no resentment, and he was willing to accept his loss without losing his integrity. Looking at the backs of the female soldiers, Captain Lei stood alone for a long time before sighing softly. He hoped that after today, he could see the female soldiers with new faces. She hoped that they would be able to carry on what Division Commander Kong had hoped for and become a true female Special Forces soldier of the airborne forces. She hoped that they would be able to shoulder the responsibility that belonged to them. The rise of a great country was never dependent on a single person, but on thousands of people. There were you, there was me, there was him. The sun was still shining brightly. The wind blew from the snow mountain, over the ancient mountains and rivers, and over the rivers that had been flowing for many years. With a faint chill, the wind blew away the heat on the female soldiers. They were in the middle of completing a 30-kilometer armed cross-country with a time limit. They were willing to accept the punishment and even felt that this punishment was already very light. The silhouette in front of them was guiding them forward. She never stopped, and they gritted their teeth and persevered. They kept moving forward until they reached the end. The contest had begun. In the first 5-kilometer race, Yi Qian, the squad leader and the deputy squad leader walked together and talked about some things. The focus was on the future training. From today onwards, Yi Qian would strengthen the basic training of the female soldiers. The squad leader and the deputy squad leader would strengthen the technical training of the female soldiers. Chapter 5190. The squad leader and vice squad leader were delighted. The basic training for the Army and Air Force was the same, so Yi Qian would strengthen the basic training for the female soldiers. This was the best arrangement. Then Yi Qian told the two that from tomorrow onwards, the female soldiers would no longer train alone. They would train together with the male soldiers. Whatever training the male soldiers needed to complete, the female soldiers would also need to complete it. In other words, from tomorrow onwards, all the female soldiers would officially enter the special reconnaissance training. The good days were truly over. After the first 5 kilometers, the three of them split up. Yi Qian took the lead. The second 5 kilometers were completed. The 15 kilometers were completed. Halfway through, it was time to rest. Yi Qian looked back at the female soldiers who were walking slower and slower. She stopped and sat down on a flat rock. If she continued walking, the female soldiers would definitely grit their teeth and follow her closely. They would not let themselves be defeated again. Looking at the time taken to complete the 15 kilometers, Yi Qian smiled. Not bad. She looked up again at the female soldiers who had stopped and were looking for a place to sit. They were very tired and had used up a lot of their energy, but they could still sit upright. It was clear that they were all in good condition. Not bad. If they continued to train well, there would be a lot of room for improvement. The female soldiers who had sat down wanted to lean against Yi Qian, but when they thought about what had happened to them, they felt too ashamed to go over. After a while, Lu Hui was the first to walk over to Yi Qian. Guo followed her. Yi Qian looked at the two people walking over and smiled slightly. It instantly blew away Guo's nervousness. She pursed her lips and smiled at Yi Qian, quickening her pace. Lu Hui waved her hands and walked even faster. She had something important to discuss with Captain Yi. Are you tired? Without getting up, Yi Qian asked the two people who were getting closer and closer to him. There are only 5 minutes to rest. I suggest you two take this time to sit down and rest. Only 5 minutes to rest? Didn't they have 10 minutes in the past? The two people who knew the news did not ask because this was the present, not the past. Lu Hui sat down and looked at Yi Qian seriously. Captain Yi, do you still remember our bet? I said that if you surpass me one day, I will definitely kneel down and admit my mistake. I, Lu Hui, am an annoying person, but I will say what I say. I won't regret what I say, and I won't go back on my word. In the past, I targeted you and ostracized you, but I didn't regret it. I won't go back on my word. I'll wait for you to surpass me. Wait for you to surpass me? These words. Yi Qian revealed a playful smile. Aren't you afraid that I've already surpassed you? Don't be afraid. If you've already surpassed me, I'll kneel down and kowtow to you. But now, you've only surpassed me in basic training. We're airborne troops, and there's still a lot of technical training. I don't believe that you've surpassed me in all of them. On this point, Lu Hui was very confident of herself. Yi Qian laughed. That was a little embarrassing. He was afraid that Lu Huizhen would kowtow to him and admit her mistake. You don't believe that I've surpassed you? That's right. You've been a paratrooper for 2.5 years, while I've only been here for half a year. It's indeed difficult to surpass you. Looks like I'll have to work harder and try to surpass you as soon as possible. If you work hard, I'll work hard too. A paratrooper from 18 years of training will never admit defeat so easily. Lu Hui's face was serious. The unwillingness to admit defeat between her brows made Yi Qian smile. Lu Hui had a sharp tongue, and it was undeniable that she was indeed very capable. Then let's go together. Yi Qian's lips curved into a smile. His smile was brighter than the sun, but Lu Hui shivered for no reason. Why did it feel like something was wrong? Chapter 5191. Lu Hui felt that something was wrong. Guochuei looked at Yi Qian and then looked at Lu Hui. She couldn't help but narrow her eyes. She also felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't pinpoint exactly what was wrong. Lu Hui, who felt that something was wrong, didn't stop. She was trying her best to catch up with Yi Qian. Sometimes, she would look at Yi Qian, who was walking in front. Sometimes, she would frown and think hard. She didn't pay attention to the armed off-road equipment. Unknowingly, she overtook several comrades who had better endurance than her. Guochuei's endurance was better than Lu Hui's. In the past, when they were tired, they would help each other walk to the finish line. This time, Guochuei was chasing after Lu Hui. Guochuei called out to her several times. Seeing that there was no response, she gritted her teeth and chased after her. When she finally caught up, she saw Lu Hui's eyebrows furrowed. It was obvious that she was thinking about something. Guochuei, whose chest was heaving up and down, asked her, "What's wrong? You've been distracted the whole way. What are you thinking about? Did you run into a problem again?" "Yeah, I ran into a problem." Lu Hui thought for a moment and looked at the figure in front of her again. She asked Guochuei, "Before the break, I said that I would try my best not to let Captain Yi surpass me. Captain Yi said that she would also try her best to surpass me. What was Captain Ye's expression when you saw her?" "If I remember correctly, she seemed quite confident at that time." Guochuei thought for a moment and nodded. "Yeah, very confident. Why, is there a problem with confidence? The current Captain Yi must be confident." "No, the previous Captain Yi had always been confident. What we see now is the real Captain Yi." "No, what I mean is, don't you think Captain Yi is too confident? So confident that, as if she has already surpassed me." As she spoke, Lu Hui's expression became more and more serious. Even her pace slowed down a lot. She was thinking about something again. Seeing this, Guochuei didn't disturb her. Lu Hui had always been the king of ideas in class. She could think of anything that others didn't think of in a short time. She would often get more surprises. Did he feel that something was not right? Indeed, something was not right. At that time, Captain Yi was very confident. There was an indescribable feeling in her faint smile, a little, that was right. Guochuei's eyes suddenly lit up. At that time, Captain Yi was like fishing for a big fish with a long line. Lu Hui was the big fish she wanted to catch. Casting a long line to catch a big fish. Do you think we are all the big fish that Captain Yi is going to catch? Guochuei spoke out the idea that flashed through her mind. Lu Hui, who was still thinking, suddenly turned her head to look at Guo, her eyes wide open. After a while, Lu Hui nodded vigorously. That's right, that's the feeling. At that time, I had a bad feeling. Chui or you. Do you think Captain Yi has already surpassed me? Impossible, Guo replied resolutely and decisively. She even shook her head and quickly said, no matter how powerful Captain Yi is, she has always been in the army before. It has only been half a year since she was transferred to the airborne forces. No matter how good she is, do you think she can surpass us in just half a year? Don't forget, Captain Yi didn't pay much attention to the training for more than half a year. What Guo said was not unreasonable. Lu Hui, who thought for a while, nodded. That's right. I have been a soldier for 2.5 years. Captain Yi has only been in the airborne forces for more than half a year. I should be thinking too much. Guo, who had always been careful, thought that Lu Hui really thought too much. Chapter 5192. Captain Yi, who has only been in the airborne force for more than half a year, can surpass Lu Hui, who came from the 18th Division. Even Guo, who was the first to notice Yi Qian's strangeness, felt that Lu Hui was too excited today and thought too much. It was impossible to think about. Captain Yi didn't train well. How could she surpass them? Forget it, don't think about it. Let's walk faster. My legs are full of lead. Every step is tiring. Lu Hui's pace was getting slower and slower, and her breathing was getting heavier and heavier. At this moment, she really felt that all her physical strength was exhausted. Tired, too tired. She had absolutely no problem carrying 30 kilometers light, even twice as much would not be a problem. Armed for 30 kilometers, the heavier the backpack had become a mountain that could overwhelm her. You're much faster than usual. I thought you weren't tired. Guo, who was already tired, gasped for breath. Her eyes seemed to be blocked by stones. She was out of breath and took Lu Hui's arm. The two of them supported each other to move forward. The team had not been too far apart. Whoever had no strength to walk would help. They supported each other and tried to catch up with the figure in front of them that they had never caught up with. Their eyes were full of admiration. Captain Yi, who was begged by Division Commander Kong, was really not ordinary. They were all as tired as cows, but she could still maintain her speed. She didn't need help and moved forward steadily. Comparing the two sides, alas, it was very shameful. At about 4:40 in the afternoon, Yi Qian, who had completed 30 kilometers of armed cross-country, appeared in the line of sight of the sentinels. Then the female soldiers, who were too tired to even crawl, gradually appeared in the eyes of the sentinels. The former was still tall and straight, while the latter staggered. It was obvious that they were exhausted. Captain Lei ordered the sentinels early in the morning to inform him if they saw the female soldiers return. Soon, Captain Lei, who learned that the female soldiers had returned, smiled and said to Division Commander Kong, "Division Commander, you have great foresight. Even the speed of the armed cross-country is much faster than before." After the exercise, Division Commander Kong reported the exercise before returning to the southwest. He did not return directly to the division headquarters. He came directly to find Captain Lei and wanted to talk to Yi Qian. After learning that Yi Qian had already made a move today and shocked all of the female soldiers, Division Commander Kong laughed heartily and said, "That's how it should be. When it's time to make a move, we must make a move. We can't be afraid of wolves in front and tigers behind. Swift and decisive, strict orders and prohibitions. Procrastination is not the style of our soldiers. I really like and admire Xiaoyi." In the end, Division Commander Kong was quite proud of his judgment, so he said to Captain Lei, "I've always been good at judging people. The first time I saw Xiaoyi, I knew she was a character. You doubted my choice before. Come, tell me now, did I make the wrong choice?" The division commander needed to be coaxed, so Captain Lei hurriedly coaxed him. He first gave him a thumbs up, then coaxed him again. "You're amazing, as expected of our division commander. Amazing, amazing! I'm impressed. If he wasn't powerful, how could he have turned you troublemakers into the elites you are today? I'm going to take a nap. Let me know when Yi Qian returns." Division Commander Kong, who had not had a good rest during the exercise, yawned, pulled a chair over, sat down, and fell asleep leaning against the chair. It was not until Yi Qian returned that Captain Lei came in and woke Division Commander Kong up. Yi Qian did not know that Division Commander Kong had come. She was waiting for all the female soldiers to come in one by one. 8 people had already arrived, and it was 9 minutes to 5 in the afternoon. 2 people arrived at 4:50, another 2 arrived at 4:55, and the last 2 arrived at 4:58 and 37 seconds. Before 5 o'clock, all 15 female soldiers had arrived, successfully completing the 30 kilometers time-limited armed cross-country. Division Commander Kong, who was in front, looked at the time, and a faint smile appeared in his serious eyes. Chapter 5193. The female soldiers who had returned to the troop gathered together. The air above the troop was filled with heavy breathing. Although their bodies were already very tired, their spirits were exceptionally excited. Their faces were red with sweat, and their eyes were bright as if they had just been washed by water. Captain Lei had set them to return to the brigade before 5 o'clock, and they really did it. Last time, they returned to the team after the 20-kilometer armed cross-country run. No, this time, the time taken for the armed cross-country run was shorter than before. The class leader was also very happy. With a smile on her face, she first praised all the female soldiers, then focused on Yi Qian. They all knew that if Yi Qian had not been at the front, it would have been difficult for them to return on time. Dozens of gazes fell on the first figure standing in the front row. The female soldiers no longer had the contempt in their eyes. How would they dare now? They should take a look at their own capabilities. The class leader who praised Yi Qian was still a little guilty. Yi Qian's qualifications, military rank, position, and ability were all higher than hers. The class leader should be Yi Qian. Yi Qian didn't know what the class leader was thinking. She had already seen Division Commander Kong standing not far away, and Captain Lei was accompanying him. The female soldiers who were in a happy state didn't notice, but the class leader looked in the direction of Captain Lei after dispersing. She smiled at Yi Qian and said, "Captain should be looking for you. Give me the backpack, I'll bring it back to the dormitory." "Thank you, class leader." Yi Qian didn't hesitate and handed the backpack over. His voice was clear and clean, like a cool summer wind brushing past the class leader's ear, without a trace of fatigue. The class leader took the heavy backpack, the corners of her mouth raised higher, and the smile on her face deepened. "You're welcome. You go first, I'm leaving." Beside Captain Lei was Division Commander Kong. The chief didn't come in person, he just stood not far away. She thought that the chief must be looking for Yi Qian alone. There was no need for her to follow Yi Qian. She had to be a little more tactful. After the class leader left, Division Commander Kong, who was standing watching, strode over. Yi Qian also strode over to welcome him. How could he stand there and wait for the chief to come over? It would be rude and inappropriate. "Xiao Yi, you did well this time. I appreciate it very much and approve of it very much. It's a pity that I missed your wonderful performance this morning. Next time, if I have the chance, I must take a good look." Division Commander Kong's admiration for Yi Qian was overflowing in his words. Which chief would not like a sharp knife and a row of thorns? When Yi Qian saw Division Commander Kong's approval, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She had not only come to the paratroopers for the sake of the female soldiers, but also for herself. She wanted to learn more professional skills, learn more, understand more, and master the skills. The biggest winner was actually herself. If Division Commander Kong was satisfied, then she could continue to stay. If Division Commander Kong was not satisfied, then she would have let down Division Commander Kong, and there would be no way for him to give her an explanation. Yi Qian, who sounded much more relaxed, smiled and said, "It's been more than half a year since we joined the airborne forces. It's time to show result. If we continue to waste resources, I will feel uneasy." Thinking back to half a year ago, in order to disguise herself, she purposely made mistakes here and there. The female soldiers hated her, and she also felt that she was very annoying. Now, she could finally put an end to all her disguises. She could finally let go and learn. Just thinking about it made her feel wonderful. When she thought about how she would be able to learn more in the future and no longer need to disguise herself, Yi Qian couldn't help but curve her eyebrows. Her smile was like the sunlight flowing over the surface of a river. It was clear, pure, and full of motivation. Chapter 5194. Yi Qian's dark eyes flashed with a hint of relief that she didn't even notice. Division Commander Kong, who caught it, sighed softly in his heart. He felt deeply sorry for the grievances that Yi Qian had suffered in the past 6 months. "I've made you suffer in the past 6 months. Little Yi, I'm deeply sorry for that. I have to apologize to you. You've suffered, little Yi." After Division Commander Kong finished speaking, he saluted Yi Qian as the leader of a division. Ostracized, ignored, belittled, reprimanded. She was clearly an elite soldier who was loved by her comrades, but because of his request, she was sent to the airborne unit. She had never been treated like this before. If she had a weaker temperament, she would have left long ago. Why would she stay here and be bullied? But she had persevered, unaffected by the female soldiers. She gritted her teeth and fought bravely. Lei Chan had been impressed several times. As a female soldier, Yi Qian's tenacity was even stronger than the male soldiers. Her rapid progress was shocking. Today, Yi Qian was not only a Special Forces soldier in the army, but also a Special Forces soldier in the airborne unit. She also had special training in the Marine and Land Forces. Female soldiers were the best in the Triamphibious Special Forces. Yi Qian, who was startled, stopped smiling and immediately returned a solemn and strange military salute. "Division Commander, I don't feel wronged. On the contrary, I'm very grateful that you gave me a chance to be in close contact with the airborne unit. It satisfied my curiosity. Division Commander, I'm the one thanking you. Thank you for your appreciation and for giving me a rare opportunity." It was such a rare opportunity. Since she had decided to join the airborne unit, she would cherish it. Wronged? No, not wronged. Everything that she had experienced, even if she had been looked down upon, was still a color in her military career. Her cheerfulness made Division Commander Kong value her even more. She was open-minded, not arrogant, and capable of taking on great responsibilities. He didn't know which Special Forces unit she would eventually join. It was really enviable. They chatted for about half an hour as they walked. Division Commander Kong asked Yi Qian if she had any suggestions regarding Captain Lei's upcoming training plan. After another half an hour of discussion, Division Commander Kong, who still had matters to deal with at the division headquarters, left in a car without even eating dinner. After sending Division Commander Kong off, Captain Lei said to Yi Qian, "We'll start training tonight. Let the male soldiers train for half a month first, find out all the weaknesses of the female soldiers. Then we'll combine their weaknesses into our proposed training plan and focus on strengthening them. We have to extend the time appropriately. The amount of training needs to be increased correspondingly. Also, the difficulty has to be gradually increased. From now on, I'll have to trouble you with the female soldiers. You'll have to stimulate them and bring out their greatest potential." Yi Jian cooperated with Captain Lei's arrangement. She was responsible for stimulating the female soldiers, while Captain Lei was responsible for strengthening the training. The class monitor would restrain all the female soldiers and twist them into a rope. They can cooperate well with each other. They can fight as a team or as a single soldier. Division Commander Kong wanted them to be both ace female soldiers and ace individual soldiers. At night, the female soldiers saw the male soldiers running in front of them with neat footsteps. Finally, they stopped in front of them and stood at attention like a pillar. Then they looked at Captain Lei, who was standing in the middle like a demon. An ominous premonition quietly crept in. The squad leader retreated to the empty position next to Yi Qian. Captain Lei faced the female soldiers and said in a dull voice, "From tonight onwards, the female soldiers and male soldiers will train together. How the male soldiers train, the female soldiers will train as well. The two groups will calculate the daily training result." Chapter 5195. The wind that blew at night had already been tainted with the chill of autumn. The cold wind in the southwest region came earlier than in other places, and some places had already snowed. Although it did not snow at the army's location at the junction of Tibet and Sichuan, and the temperature was still good during the day, the coldness was obvious at night. Standing in the cold night breeze, the female soldiers straightened their backs and listened to Captain Lei's announcement of the next training plan. After the announcement of the first phase of the training plan, the female soldiers' hearts sank a little. Then the second phase of the training plan was announced, and the female soldiers secretly clenched their hands. When the third phase of the training plan was announced, the female soldiers calmed down and calmly accepted the cruel training towards the end, because they knew that from tonight onwards, they would really join the airborne special reconnaissance team, unlike before where the male soldiers served as instructors and the squad leader led the training. Tonight, they would really be separated from the original troops. Everyone with poor grades will have an extra hour of off-plane training at night, and get up half an hour earlier in the morning for a morning run. Do you understand? Understood. In the smoky night, the female soldiers raised their chins slightly and answered Captain Lei loudly. Their voices were full of energy and penetrating power. Do you really understand? Captain Lei asked in return, seeming a little skeptical. The expressions on the female soldiers' faces were already flushed, and they answered in a more imposing voice, "Understood." They did not allow themselves to be doubted. Being doubted meant being despised. Female soldiers were also soldiers, and they would never be looked down upon by male soldiers. In return, Captain Lei's cold voice still expressed doubts about the understanding of the female soldiers. There was also a trace of contempt, which stimulated the female soldiers to hold their breath. They could not wait to fight with the male soldiers now. "Yi Qian, do you think they understand?" Captain Lei asked Yi Qian with a smile, ignoring the rest of the female soldiers. The whetstone named Yi Qian said loudly, "Understood. Bleeding and broken bones are trivial. Bleeding but not tears, broken bones do not end." Captain Lei nodded with satisfaction this time and asked the female soldiers, "Do you understand?" Only then did the female soldiers understand what Captain Lei meant by understand. They had misunderstood. Understood. Bleeding and broken bones are trivial. Bleeding but not tears, broken bones do not end. This time, they really understood. Loud and imposing. "I just don't know if he can really do it." Captain Lei was still not satisfied. He turned around and faced the male team. His fierce voice was like an ancient sword, breaking through the air with a majestic danger. "Male soldiers. Yes. Tonight, I'll show them what it's like to bleed but not cry. Yes. Take this, female soldiers who understand." After Captain Lei finished speaking, he retreated from the middle step by step to the outside and whistled, "Begin." More than 40 male soldiers shouted at the same time and rushed toward the female soldiers like waves crashing against the shore. Although the female soldiers selected from the various Air Force units all had strong comprehensive abilities and had fought with the male soldiers before, it was always one-on-one. They had never experienced 1-on-3. coupled with the fact that the male soldiers were coming at them with such ferocious momentum that even the air seemed to be stained with the stench of blood. Everyone couldn't help but take a step back at the first moment. If it weren't for Yi Qian's stern shout to stop them, they probably would have retreated even more. You want to retreat without a fight? Meet them. The cold voice tore through the female soldiers' timidity, leaving them with no way to retreat. With a loud shout, they clenched their fists and followed the figure who had rushed out earlier than them to take the initiative to attack the male soldiers. Chapter 5196. The two sides fought, fists hitting flesh, and the dull sound of hand-to-hand combat was endless. Even the sound of bones hitting hard objects could be heard, and one would think that the bones had broken. The male soldiers formed groups of 3 and cooperated well with each other to continuously attack a female soldier. The female soldier who was attacked fought back with her fists, legs, and knees. She fought back and counterattacked with the martial arts she had described. They were actually very tired. The 30 kilometers of armed cross-country during the day had consumed too much of their strength. Although they had a short rest, their feet were still sore. Every time they lifted their feet to sweep out, their calves tightened until the muscles were about to break. Tired, sore, and painful were the current conditions of the female soldiers. Plus, they were beaten. Tonight, the female soldiers really tasted the feeling of bleeding but not crying. Lu Hui was pressed down by a male soldier. Her neck was pressed tightly by a pair of iron palms. Her one-sided face was pressed against the ground, and it was accompanied by a burning pain. She did not admit defeat and was still fighting back with all her might. Suddenly, her calf was kicked hard. Before she could recover from the pain, a second kick came. This time, it landed on her thigh. After 2 consecutive heavy blows, she could not control her tears and directly rushed out. It was easy to say that bleeding but not crying, but to do it was difficult. Captain Lei asked the female soldiers if they understood, if they were ready, if they understood how hard and cruel the next step would be. Now they understood. It was painful, really painful. It was so painful that Lu Hui felt that she was going to faint. She, who had never admitted defeat, squeezed out a voice from her chest, through her throat, and then out from her mouth. She found a very deep sound. Her slender body was like an earth dragon that turned over. She arched her back, raised her right arm, and slammed into the male soldier who pressed her to death. So what if it was 1 against 3? As long as she was not killed, she could continue to fight. It was either you die or I die. This was the cruelty of the battlefield. As a soldier, she must understand. Guochui was kicked in the lower abdomen by a male soldier. The kick hit the diaphragm of the abdomen, and the pain came. She was slightly distracted, and a black shadow flew in front of her. Bang! The male soldier's instep hit her face, and the force was so strong that she fell to the ground on the spot. She fell to the ground, and there was no time for her to cry out in pain. A strong wind blew directly from above. Guochui was shocked and immediately rolled on the ground, narrowly avoiding the kick from above. Her reaction was fast enough, and the male soldiers who were attacking separately could not help but let out a low "eh." A male soldier said coldly, "Interesting. But you can avoid it once, can you avoid it a second time?" The second kick. Guochui did not dodge. After confirming that Guochui had no more strength to fight back, the 3 male soldiers stopped and turned to the next target. Unfortunately, they turned to look at Yi Jian, who was trembling the most fiercely and did not suffer any losses at all. Instead, she made the male soldiers suffer. Yi Qian was not afraid from the beginning. She had been beaten to a pulp in the Snowfield Brigade. What was there to be afraid of? They were ruthless, but she would be even more ruthless. Whoever hurt her, she would hurt them even more. Yi Qian, who had learned how to kill enemies in one move, knocked down 2 male soldiers. She turned to the male soldier who had been sneaking behind her. "Brother, you kicked me 3 times just now. I have to charge you double the interest." The other female soldiers could not handle it, but she still had time to chat. Chapter 5197. The male soldier who was targeted didn't want to chat with Yi Qian at all. He didn't have the urge to chat at all. He only had the urge to fight properly. Glancing at his comrade who had been knocked down and was crawling up with trembling legs, the male soldier clenched his teeth and no longer attacked secretly. He changed to an open attack. As a scout, attacking in the dark was their true love. Attacking in the open was almost a battle of life and death. That was also a battle of life and death. Therefore, once they attacked in the open, every move was a killing move. Yi Qian was fierce, and the male soldiers were fierce. The two sides fought in the widest area in the entire combat circle. If they didn't leave a wider area, they were really worried about accidentally injuring their own side. Her whole body was in so much pain that not a single part of her body was unharmed. Guochui first sat up with both hands on the ground, then slowly stood up with one hand on the ground. After standing up, she still couldn't straighten her back immediately. It was slow enough. The muscles in the areas where she was in pain were affected. It was so painful that Guochui took a few deep breaths. Her face was pale from the pain, and the cold sweat on her forehead was wet. She was in a sorry state. Guochui, who couldn't even straighten her back, held her stomach and looked around. The scene made her heart ache. There weren't many female soldiers who could withstand it. She could recognize the last female soldiers who were still fighting. There was the squad leader, the vice squad leader, Lu Hui, Fang Xing, Wu Pingping, Xiao Yalan. The other comrades were in the same situation as her. They were all attacked by the male soldiers until they couldn't fight back. No, there was also Yi Qian. Where did she go? Guochui, who didn't find Yi Qian immediately, was a little flustered. Could it be that even she was defeated? Her gaze swept over, and her pupils contracted fiercely. She saw the figure she was looking for. 1 against 3, it became 1 against 5. 5 male soldiers against 1 Captain Yi. This was not fair. It was too unfair. Guochui gritted her teeth and looked for Captain Lei. She wanted to find Captain Lei and tell him that 1 against 3 was already unfair. Now it was 1 against 5. No matter how strong Captain Yi was, could she win? The male soldiers weren't ordinary soldiers. They were all special forces from the airborne troop. It was difficult to win against them one-on-one. 1 against 3, 1 against 5, all the female soldiers could only be beaten. Taking a deep breath, Guochui, who was trying to forget the pain, found Captain Lei. She dragged her feet and staggered over. The stubbornness in her eyes was like a lamp bright in the dark. It was a little scary. Captain Lei keenly felt that someone was staring at him. He retracted his gaze from Yi Jian and turned his eyes slightly to find out who was staring at him. Yi Qian used his tightened arm to block a male soldier's fist. His feet moved nimbly to the side, and he avoided a fist from the right side. He dodged several steps in a row, and as if there were a pair of eyes on the back of his head, he clenched the strong leg on the side of his head, crushed the ankle of the male soldier, and pulled it in front of him. The back of his head turned around and heard the painful sound of the bilateral medial ligaments. Yi Qian, with his sharp eyes, showed the coldest smile. He pressed his right elbow and fiercely raised his elbow to hit the leg of the male soldier. Ah! The cold air was even louder than before. Yi Qian relaxed his hands. The male soldier behind him, who tried to steal a chicken but ended up losing the rice, retracted his right leg that was trembling from the pain. He tested the ground with the tip of his foot, but before he could fully exert his strength, he suddenly retracted his right leg and arched it tightly. Chapter 5198. It was 2F** King painful. It was so painful that he could not land on the ground and could only stand on one leg. He could only withdraw. If he fought again, he did not dare to maintain his leg. He did not know if he could stand normally. Captain Lei pointed at Yi Qian, who could still fight back in the desperate situation, and coldly questioned the female soldiers who were unfair to him. Do you see that? If you have the time to stand here and question whether it is unfair to fight 1 against 3 or 1 against 5, why don't you go and see how Yi Qian, who you once looked down on, is in an invincible position in a disadvantageous situation. She did not say it was unfair to fight 1 against 5. You, a loser who lost in less than 15 minutes and did not even have the power to fight back, what qualifications do you have to stand here and point out your opinions? The right to speak and the right to decide is in my hands. What I ask, what you do. Do you still need me to explain to you? Although Captain Lei was cold when he spoke to the female soldiers, he always had a sense of propriety and cared about the female soldier's face. It was their first time here, so they had to adapt. Now, the new recruits had 3 months of new training. As veterans, they were given half a year to adapt to the new environment. They had already given enough face. From now on, if the female soldiers made mistakes, they would be treated the same as the male soldiers. If you can't stand it, you can leave. Guichui, whose face turned green and white, bit her lower lip. The stubbornness in her eyes turned into an unyielding sharpness. She turned her head, her eyes firm, and slowly said, "The right to decide is in your hands. As for the right to speak, I will definitely fight for myself." She was also stubborn. Not bad, keep it up. Captain Lei, whose eyes flashed with a hint of a smile, replied coldly, "Wait until you have the right to speak before you talk to me." With that, his cold eyes suddenly fixed and stared at her without blinking. Guichui saw this and hurriedly looked over. She saw the male soldiers attacking from behind, continuously raising their feet to kick Yi Qian. Except for the head, which was not in their attack range, every part of his body was the focus of their attacks. Her heart was in her throat. The hand that had been covering her abdomen to suppress the pain unconsciously loosened and clenched into a fist. Yi Qian, knock them all down. Knock them all down. Forgetting the pain all over her body, Guichui clenched her fist and secretly cheered for Yi Qian in her heart. Yi Qian, who was 1 against 4, chose to knock them down one by one. She had always been good at fighting and her reaction was fast. 20 minutes. This kick. The male soldier's kick not only made Guichui's heart jump to her throat, but even Captain Lei clenched his fists. He was being attacked from all sides. There was a high chance that Yi Qian would be hit. With a cold look in his eyes, Yi Qian quickly moved to the left. His hands, which were originally used to block the attack, suddenly moved to the right. It was as if there was a pair of eyes at the back of his head. He hugged the leg that was aimed at his head. Guichui was so nervous that even her breathing stopped. Yi Qian actually clamped down on the male soldier's right leg. She really thought that Yi Qian would not be able to dodge. Like her, he would be kicked in the head by the male soldier. His head buzzed from the kick and his vision turned black. He would lose his chance to fight back and be beaten up by the male soldiers. However, Yi Qian did not. She dodged and even clamped down on the male soldier's leg. She could still attack. Chapter 5199. Guichui's eyes lit up with excitement. She saw Yi Jian hugging the soldier's right leg tightly and using it as a focal point. She bent her body into the shape of a shrimp at lightning speed. Her reaction was really fast. If it were someone like her, there would be no way for her to dodge. Captain Lei's eyes widened in anticipation. He was waiting to see how Yi Qian would counterattack. Yi Qian, who was bent like a shrimp, was actually very fast. Captain Lei and Guichui could see how Yi Qian dodged and counterattacked, but ordinary people could not see it. Even if they recorded the video, they would have to slow it down 3 times to see Yi Qian's counterattack. From bending like a shrimp to suddenly doing a handstand, it was actually just 2 seconds. Her head was down and her feet were up. Her legs were hooked, and she used her calves as a weapon to attack the soldier's neck and head. With a cold shout, Yi Qian made a pretty beautiful counterattack. She used her calves to clamp the soldier's neck and threw him to the ground. She took the opportunity to stand still. This series of falls could be said to be quite awesome. Oh damn, what move is this? Why didn't she fall together with him? Captain Lei and Guochui were not the only ones watching Yi Qian. There was also a group of male soldiers who were watching with rapt attention. Yi Qian knocked down her comrade, and then unexpectedly stood still. The male soldiers really did not see how she did it. No matter how they looked at it, they should have fallen together. Quick, let's try it. The male soldiers, who had never seen such a maneuver for the first time, decided to try it themselves. Yi Qian's speed was too fast. They could not see clearly, so they could only try it themselves. A male soldier stood still, and the other male soldier directly did a handstand. He first hugged his comrade's leg with one hand, then hugged it with both hands. His legs were hooked tightly around his comrade's neck and head, trying to clamp them down. Plop, if the clamp was successful, both of them would fall together. After trying it once, they knew how difficult it was. The more difficult it was, the more challenging it was. If the first time did not work, they would try a second time. Again. Let's change the person. Lizzie, come here. Be more flexible. When the plum, who was called out, heard that, he first said, I'm flexible. Then, he walked over and tried it. The male soldier, nicknamed Plum, wiped his sweat and said, It's a difficult move. It's very difficult for ordinary people to do it. I can only ask Yi Qian for help. Even Li Zi, who had the softest physique, could not do it. She could only look for Yi Qian. At this time, no one cared about whether the comrade who had been knocked down by Yi Jian was in pain or not. They were all watching with great interest. From time to time, they would let out a sigh of relief. Look, they could see the pain on their comrade's face even from a few meters away. It's okay, their skin is thick and they'll be fine after a while. Reality proved that the male soldiers who were kicked, hit, or kicked by Yi Qian were in pain for 3 days, and the pain only disappeared after a week. His feet and hands were extremely strong. A kick or a punch was even more painful than being hit by a lump of metal. What did he eat? How could he be so strong? After half an hour of wrestling, the male soldier who had been hit hard by Yi Qian's elbow on his right leg and could only stand on one leg said gloomily, How can he be so strong? He doesn't look like a girl at all. Was he born with it? Yi Qian thought for a moment, then laughed and said, It's not my nature. In the past, when I was training, I had to wear 10 caddy iron boots to run. If I was slow, I would have to tie 10 caddy sandbags to my feet for a day. The male soldier was stunned, and the female soldier was dumbfounded. Chapter 5200. Wearing iron boots and tying sandbags to his legs. What kind of operation was this? Why did the army brothers' training become more and more brutal? They had not received any news or even heard of it. How did you train with iron boots? Are you trying to train the strength of your feet? The male soldier who had beaten the hardest stood on one leg and humbly asked, How many cycles of training are there? Yi Qian lifted his leg, which had grown a lot since he had escaped from the Demon King. He wiped away the fine sand in his mouth and patiently explained, 2 months of iron boot training. After that, I've been tying sandbags to my legs, which has greatly improved the strength of my legs. The male soldier who had his doubts answered nodded. I see. Could it be that you were able to crush the male soldiers when you were doing a handstand? That can be of great use at critical moments. Yes, a successful counterattack. You guys check your bodies first. I'll go check on the female soldiers. They were beaten up badly by you guys tonight. Be careful, we'll get back at you sooner or later. The male soldiers were a little uncomfortable when he said that. They mumbled, We can't help it. It's hard to follow military orders. We can only obey boss orders. How dare we not listen? We'll wait for the female soldiers to get back at us. It'll only be satisfying if we fight with equal strength. Tonight, only you and the rest of us fought well. The others were average. We were beaten in less than 10 minutes. Too weak. It's boring to fight. So straightforward. Yi Qian rubbed his forehead and sighed. Of course it's boring to fight 3 against 1. If we have a one-on-one fight someday, you'll definitely feel good. Ha ha ha, good. We'll wait for a one-on-one. Help us check on the little noobs. Don't let them get beaten up by us and be traumatized from then on. It was a very arrogant answer, but also a very qualified answer. Yi Qian raised his eyebrows and said, "Just you wait." Amidst the laughter of the male soldiers, he quickened his pace and returned to the female soldiers' class. "You're in trouble. You're in big trouble. Yi Qian told you to wait. Next time, you'll be the one to get beaten up. It's fun to be brave, but you'll be crying afterward. Pfft, do you think you can escape? Don't worry, brother. Our boss will arrange it well. You just wait for Yi Qian. It's really possible. Don't be the pot calling the kettle black." After the fight ended, the wind blowing over the training ground became less fierce. The female soldiers wiped the dust off their lip. All of them were injured and their faces were distorted. They felt as if they had been run over by a car. There was not a single part of their body that did not hurt. Even so, the female soldiers did not let themselves cry out in pain. They still had the strength to break their teeth and swallow it down. When they saw Yi Qian walking over in one piece, the female soldiers' gloomy faces finally brightened up. They had lost. At least Yi Qian had won. Even when it was 5 against 1, they did not suffer any losses. The ones who suffered the most were the male soldiers. At least one of them won and the entire army wasn't wiped out. Captain Lei, who was talking to the female class monitor, didn't look up until Yi Qian walked over. Wearing iron boots, the Navy's water ghosts had to go through basic training. Yi Qian had experience in shooting at sea. Could it be that she had also gone to the Navy to participate in training? The female soldiers surrounded Yi Qian. Although they were beaten up until their bodies hurt, it did not stop them from being curious about Yi Qian. From 1 against 3, to 1 against 4, to 1 against 5, they did not lose to the male soldiers even after half an hour. Putting aside the paratroop training, the female soldiers were really convinced by Yi Qian after a day. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.